Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.
Well, welcome everyone to our second Saturday 8 a.m. budget meeting. It is January 14th, and we are hoping to conclude the budget discussions today so that we'll be able to take it to the next select board meeting for an official vote. So my name is Jeannie Jenkins. I have the pleasure of chairing this board. I'm going to ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Gary Corey.
Good morning, Tom Haley.
Good morning, Jim Carroll.
Jean Connor.
Sarah Perrin.
Bruce Lee Clark.
Thank you all. And also with us this morning are Town Manager Stu Hurd, Nancy Lively, who takes excellent minutes every meeting, and Jim Byers on Cat TV. This is pre-recorded, yes?
Correct.
And we thank Cat TV very much for filming this. And so, with no further ado, let's start with this illustrious group we have in front of us. So we're going to look at Fire Fund first, yes?
Okay. Yes. So good morning, Paul Doucette, Chief of Police and Public Safety Director for the town of Bennington. As you all know, I work closely with the fire chiefs. This year, we worked very closely putting together fiscal year 2024 for the Bennington Fire Department. We feel as though we have put together a very fiscally responsible budget for the upcoming year in 2024. We have a few highlights that we'd like to go over with all of you, and then we're more than happy to answer your questions. I'll let the chief and the deputy introduce themselves before we get started.
I'm Chief Jim Wright.
Deputy Chief Jeff Santarcangelo.
So it's been a lot of fun working with Jimmy over the last 4 years. Jimmy has expressed that he is ready to take a break. And he, after 4 years of serving as the Bennington Fire Chief, he is going to be stepping down at the end of the month and allowing someone else to take over as the Fire Chief. But he took great interest in fiscal year 2024, as did the Deputy Chief, Jeff Arcangelo, as well as the Assistant Chief, Nathan Barris. And we feel as though we put together a very good budget. I'll let the guys talk about some of the equipment. I just want to get started by reminding all of you that we have a very, very good fire department in the Bennington Fire Department. A group of dedicated individuals, very similar to the police department. It's hard to find staffing. It's hard to find volunteers, and the Bennington Fire Department does their best to bring in volunteers, and that's a goal for 2024. Is trying to recruit and train additional members. I'm just going to start this by saying that one of the things that we wanted you to take a serious look at and consideration is 03-4500 100, which is the salaries and wages for the chief, the deputy chief, the assistant chief, and the person who completes fire reports for the Bennington Fire Department. We went back to the year 2018, and 2018 to 2023 is 5 years. This would be actually 6 years, where the chiefs have not seen an increase in salary or stipend, whichever you'd like to call it. This year we did propose an additional $500 for each chief, the deputy chief and the assistant chief, which would increase the line by $1,500. In conversations with Mr. Hurd, we decided that we would leave that up to the board, but I want you to know that I do fully support the fact that the fire chiefs do receive an additional $500. The fire chiefs are responsible for responding to a majority of fire calls. This year, the Bennington Fire Department responded to 310 calls for service. It's a lot for a volunteer fire department. And, it's wear and tear on personal vehicles. As we all know, fuel costs are up. So I would ask that you consider that and making the adjustment to 0345 100 and adding that $1,500 back in there, which would make it so that the chief receives $4,500, the deputy chief receives $4,000, and the assistant chief receives $3,500. The department secretary completing the fire reports for the state of Vermont would remain the same at $3,000. So I would ask that you consider that. Any questions on that? No? Thank you. Chief Wright is going to go over, we have a couple of highlights that we're going to go over, starting with 0345 10 190 and the replacement of 4 sets of turnout gear.
Yeah, 4 sets of gear, that's $22,000. Probably be cutting it tight because of the price of increase. We just set up 2 guys. 1 set was $3,500. That was back in September. And they just said the price increase is going up to 15 to 20% just for the gear. That's not counting gloves, hoods, boots.
And we also have been responsible in the fact that we've worked with our vendor and have actually purchased some demo gear. Not demo gear that goes inside fires, but demo gear that is utilized at shows for display and things like that. So we are trying to be responsible and not buying everything brand spanking new. If our vendor has something that we can buy that has been on display, then we have been making that purchase. Correct?
Yeah, it's called Outland gear. It's like forest fires and stuff like that. It's lighter gear. It's for our pump operators that don't go in the building or go near the fire scene. They don't need the real good protection like a Class A and a Class B. And some of the Cs will have the good gear, but most of the pump operators and the people that are just going to stay back and support the rest of the guys will get the cheaper stuff. That was $1,800 that we paid for that set. But that's going to go up too, so.
Can I just clarify, so the 4 sets here are for full gear for people going into?
Structural fire.
Structural fires, yes.
So moving right along on the next highlight is 0345 4230, which is a communication small tools and equipment purchase. It's been amazing to work with Deputy Chief Sant'Arcangelo. He's very particular when it comes to radios and pagers. He's done an excellent job. We're looking at replacing some Motorola radios that date back almost 20 years. That are just not they're just not compatible with what we're doing now. They're not programmable and things like that. I mean, maybe if we still had a Radio Shack in town and we could go buy little transistors or whatever, we could make those work. But so we are proposing that we purchase 8 Motorola radios. We're looking at that $24,890. Listen. With COVID and everything else, the ability to buy radios and buy components has been a challenge. On the police side, we ordered radios back in August, and we just found out that we probably won't realize them until April or May. And of course, we're locked in because we have our quote, right? And we have our purchase order entered, but we're looking at a 15 to 20% increase in the price of radios and components. This is something that is needed for Fireground. Jimmy, I don't know if you want to go any further with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the same predicament as they are. We put the order in September, and we haven't heard word back from them. We call them all the time. Nobody answers us back. They're afraid to give us an answer in which they can't give us the order when we needed it. So we have to wait for this year. Maybe next year it'll be a little bit easier to get the last set because all the trucks will have all their sets.
And the fire department does a great job maintaining the communications equipment. And so that's really, I mean, those are absolutely necessary for Fireground communications. As you all know, this building, we continue to make improvements in the fire facility. Paul Danzero and Mark Sawyer and their staff do an excellent job maintaining this building, but we are proposing installing heat pumps which you know is heat and air conditioning in all the company rooms on the second floor to the cost of $25,000, which is 03/45/78/10, and we do feel that in the long run there'll be a cost savings in energy efficiency. So really, other than that, under fire equipment, standard, $49,910 under 458650, which is a lease payment for the rescue pumper truck. And then the standard transfer to reserve of $25,000. As you all know, engine 935 will eventually be replaced. Right now, we're working on speccing that, and it's a 2.5-year wait just to get the cab and chassis. And we're hoping that we'll put this $25,000 into the reserve account, and working with Mr. Hurd, who is very fiscally responsible. You know, our goal is to hopefully be able to use a large amount of money out of the reserve fund to buy the new engine 935. So, really, other than that, the principal and interest payments for the new ladder truck begin this year. The principal payment is $53,000, and the interest payment is $19,000. So those really are the highlights of the Bennington Fire Department budget. I don't know, Jimmy and Jeff, if you have anything else that you want to touch on. I mean, the rest really is operations, you know, speedy dry and fuel and things like that. I mean, it's this is a tight budget. You know, we sat several times, including on Thursday, and you know, we kind of looked at each other and said that when we came here, we wanted you all to know that we did our best to put this budget together. And you know, we do have some concerns, especially with fuel costs and things like that, but. I mean, we've made it work in the past, and we think that this budget will get us through fiscal year 2024.
Questions from the board? Gary?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
In the highlights, it says the line item for 03/4500.100, it was $3,500, but in our budget, it shows $13,500.
Yes, that's a typo. It should say currently that it was at $13,500, and I'm asking that you add $1,500 to that to make it an even $15,000. I'm sorry, I did not catch that over here, but it should be when we built the budget with Mr. Hurd and Ms. Courier, they put it in at $13,500. And I'm asking that you increase that by $1,500 and bring it to $15,000.
Okay.
Yeah, that is my typo. I take full responsibility for that one.
And then the only other question is, if we order the radios, are you saying it's like a year down the road before we're going to get them? Is that
what we're hoping for is that when the taxpayers approve the budget, and once we get very close to July 1st, that we can get that order in. It's entirely possible that we may not realize those for 6 or 8 months. But, you know, we have to have the money in the budget before we can place that order.
Yeah.
Like the ones we just ordered back in August, September? We ordered in September. We're just waiting for that order to come in. So.
Yeah, can you, because there was an order, so we approved communication equipment last year as well, right? So can you just give us sort of the, I don't know, whether it's a 2 or a 3-year sort of plan of what you're doing?
We were doing each truck. We got 4 pumpers, well, the ladder truck and 3 pumpers, and each one's got a bank of radios. So when they come to the scene, they can grab a radio and have communications when they go in the building and stuff. This one here, this one we just ordered in September is the 3rd truck. This one here is for the 4th truck. So and then we got 1 more set for the chiefs and the captains.
Perfect.
So this purchase in fiscal year 2024, we discussed this on Thursday, should make it so that all of our radios are up to date.
And none are 20 years old.
That are not 20 years old.
Yes. Well, I've been in 30, and I think I still got the same radio.
Impressive.
It's going to go in the shelf for antique.
Tom, did you have anything?
So,
Jim? Oh, okay, great.
Of course, I just took a bite of my muffin. I thought he had questions. The $25,000 for the heat pumps, I'm assuming that that's utilizing rebates, all the energies that Paul's shaking his head, yes. I was just assuming that, but wanted the public to know that there has been due diligence done to get to that
Absolutely.
money. Okay.
And that
that's
budget
total.
is still $25,000 less than what was allocated last year, so it looks like, right?
Right, well,
Or you didn't
the
spend-
The pumps that we purchased last year are going to take care of this room here, and we have those, and we anticipate that they'll be installed and operational late winter, early spring of 2023.
Okay.
So this is the next step to bring, efficiency to this building.
And it really is the last step, is it not? Make this building complete.
Yes. I will also add, as far as efficiency goes, Jimmy, Jeff, and Nate have been, sometimes you roll out on a fire call, you leave the door open. These guys have been fantastic. There are notes up. They're told at their meetings to make sure that the doors go down. So we really are doing our best to be, frugal with the energy efficiency and keeping the cost down.
Yeah, when we hear the trucks pulling out of the bay, we call over the radio, says make sure your doors are shut.
Fantastic. Sarah?
This, I think, looks pretty lean, and we're very lucky to have a volunteer fire department. Thank you, and thank you for your service. Looking at next year, what should we anticipate? Seems like you're keeping it pretty lean this year. What are you thinking for next year that you haven't put in for this year?
We haven't really thought about it right yet. Towards the springtime, we'll start thinking what we really need for the fire service to help everybody more along. We're getting older.
We're all getting older.
But I think it's also nice that this sort of completes efficiency updates on the building itself, and it completes the communication.
Well, and also, Ms. Jenkins, with the cooperation of this select board and boards in the past, we feel pretty confident about our communications here within the fire department. We've made amazing strides at improving fireground communication within the building. We did a lot of fantastic work with having a reserve account. We've replaced the console downstairs, and now upgrading the smaller tools such as the pagers and the portable radios. I think that we're really in good shape, and that's part of our responsibility, right? Is to make sure that we're not spending money unnecessarily, but making sure that we have the equipment that we need for safe fireground operations. And I love the question about the future, and that is something. I mean, we meet on a regular basis, and we're always coming up with ideas, and so I think. I think moving forward, the next big purchase on the horizon that I already mentioned was replacing engine 935, but we're doing very well with our reserve account, and we'll be working with Michelle Johnson and selling our existing ladder truck and hopefully putting that money right back into the reserve with Mr. Hurd's permission, of course, and being prepared for that so that it's not such a heavy hit when we replace that truck.
Follow up to that. The equipment that you mentioned for the set of gear, do you feel that set of gear for, you mentioned, I think it's class, you have to help me out here.
Class A, B, and C's?
Yeah, is the class A lesser, is that the lesser
No,
class?
Class A is the interior guy that goes in the building,
Okay, so
fights
it's
the
the
fire.
class,
B is backup, they'll go in the building too if they're needed.
okay,
C's will stay outside for support. The guys bring tools to the door and stuff like that where they don't need the real fire protection.
okay. So
Your pump operators
it's a
and
class D, the 1,200 that you mentioned?
The C,
The C,
That's C.
okay. Do you feel that's adequate?
for those guys.
Yes, okay,
Yes,
all right.
because they don't get
near the fire.
fire.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we're
Yeah.
making everybody have
We
enough.
wouldn't do that to anybody.
Okay, thanks.
I think the other thing that's important to remember is last year, we approved a new washer for the fire department. We purchased that, we installed that, and these guys are fantastic. Guys and girls are fantastic about after a structure fire, maintaining their gear, washing it, putting it up in the drying room. And so, you know, we're able to do that, again, because we have the proper equipment here.
Thank you.
Which-
Yes.
Which may have answered my question. A couple of years ago on a tour, we were brought into the room where I think it's washer and the drying of turnout gear was taking place. And there was, it seemed to me, it took a long time for everybody's gear to get washed because there was not adequate washing facility. That's been taken care of?
Yep, we got 2 washers down there now, so one to go in, put them in, when the next guy, they'll leave, next guy come up, they'll hang their gear, then they'll put another set in, it just keeps rotating it until everybody gets all their stuff washed.
After
After the fire, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Part of that is if the gear is going to become that much more expensive, it's very important that it gets
Yeah.
cleaned, as we know. That's it. Everybody else has asked my questions, so we're good.
Jean, did you have another question?
I just have a little, kind of a silly question. So if the gear is wet and it's in the process of drying and there happens to be another call, do they wear them wet?
No, we got another set.
Oh, wow.
For the interior guys, the A's and B's will have, we've been working on extra sets
I see.
for them in case we had that problem. So,
I'm sorry if that was already answered. If it was, I
No, it
didn't.
wasn't.
We
Okay.
had before we could buy 2 sets for guys. We were using outdated sets. So
That
even
they
though they were out of date,
Right.
if it was another fire, they could use that.
And the other question I had was, not too many years ago, there was a huge concern about not having enough firefighters. Do you feel like today that you're in a better position? You just mentioned that you're all getting older, and Sarah said we all are, and that's true, but
Yeah.
we're not firefighters. So do you feel like
We are
it's...
taking applications.
we got it out there all the time. We have battle day and stuff like that. We try to get recruits.
No, I'm not accusing you of not
Yeah.
trying. I'm not saying that at all. I'm
It's-
saying, do you feel like there's enough?
We got enough right now,
Uh-huh.
but if we have something major, we got all the other departments around the community, the county, that we can call in. They'll help us. They'll be more than gladly to help us.
Okay, so the answer is yes. For now, you feel
For
okay?
now, we can still hold our own.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Other questions from, yes, go ahead.
Where might one apply if they wanted to become a volunteer?
Good for you.
Right here at the department, we're here every Wednesday night. And if they want to come down, fill out an application, then we send it over to the chief here, and he runs it through the books and say, okay.
The books.
There's also someone in the office during the week, is that not true?
There's always somebody here. There's always somebody here.
We also, Jimmy's last town report, which you will all be reviewing once Michelle puts it all together, we are encouraging people that want to be volunteer firefighters to call and leave a very detailed message, and then someone will get back to them. We actually included that in this year's town report to encourage people to apply here. It's not like it used to be. You know, we used to have many businesses in town that were locally owned that firefighters could leave work during the day and things like that. And, you know, unfortunately, that's become a thing of the past. And, you know, so and there's a lot of training required. You know, the town does require quite a bit also. One of the conversations that I had with Michelle Johnson and Stu Hurd is, you know, we send people up to occupational health. It's $400 now just to get a physical and a back screening. You know, those are required because we want to make sure that we're getting people that are physically fit. So, There's a lot to it, and that's why we're asking people to leave their contact information so that we can get back to them and tell them what it all entails. And, I think, I'll say it one more time, the group of volunteer fire department members that we have with the Bennington Fire Department are outstanding. Jimmy's right, you look around at a major fire, a structure fire, and you look around and you look at the age of some of these people, and they've been doing it for a very long time, and we're fortunate to have that here. So.
You got a question?
Yes.
This is, of course, open to women as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We got one in there. She surprised me quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Good.
She packed right up and the way she went. I said, okay, more often. I wish I had more of them.
I think it's important that you all know, and we'll save the name for now, but it's a conversation we had on Thursday. The Bennington Fire Department has their first female line officer. Never had a female officer in the Bennington Fire Department, and we now have a female line officer, which I think is outstanding. She's a ticket, and she's into it, and she does a great job. And, I think it's fantastic.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm not sure everyone in town knows it's a volunteer department, especially new people to town. I don't know if there's a way to really, get some really great press and about the fire department and your needs, and just, it's so interesting, and a lot of people don't know. So, I don't know, I would encourage, maybe Jonah could help out with that?
We have a communication.
We have a communications coordinator, so.
Yeah, Jonah's done some. He's done some for us on the fire department side. That's why I think it's important that we have the fire department involved in New Experience Camp, why we have the fire department involved in National Night Out, and things like that, so that we can recruit and retain. So I think it's important.
Yeah, it is important.
I want to say one more thing.
Okay.
There's an old adage that I heard when I lived in New York, and I saw it in action, not only in New York, but in Bennington. And the adage goes, when everybody else is running out of the building, firefighters are running in.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I'll open it up to anyone that has questions. Anyone in the community that's here that would like to ask a question? Any more questions from the board? Well, I think, Chief, thank you for your service. We are so happy that you have served our community so well, and it's bittersweet for you to.
I enjoyed it. I
sit
still
down.
probably got another 4 or 5 years in me, so.
Good. Okay, so you're not leaving.
No, I'm
Okay.
not leaving
All right,
yet.
good. Okay, that's so
I
happy
gotta
to hear.
support the rest of the guys here.
Good, okay. All right.
Jeannie, would it be appropriate to act on the stipend request before they
We
leave?
can. Should we make a motion to act on the stipend request now?
If you wish to do so?
Someone like to make a motion?
I would move that we change that figure to 15,000, whatever the number is.
All right, any more discussion on this? No? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Stu. Thank you. That was selfless. All right, so now.
I'll catch up with you guys.
Let's see, the highlights are on page 4, maybe I can start on page 4.
And the other starts on page 5.
5 in the other?
5 and 6
Okay, 5 in the budget.
in the budget, 5 and 6.
All right. So hello, so let's move on to the police department. And Chief Doucette, we see you again.
Yes.
Yep, we'll turn it over to you guys.
All right, so good morning. Again, my name is Paul Doucette, Chief of Police and Public Safety Director for the town of Bennington. At this point, We're going to move on to the police department budget. To my right, I have Lieutenant Camillo Grandi, who is in charge of the police department when I'm not available. I've asked him to sit here today. We have worked together in preparing fiscal year 2024. I believe this is my 12th prepared budget over the years. In front of you, I'm sure that you have the highlights of the Bennington Police Department budget, we'll come back to police administration. We'll just start out by telling you that calendar year 2022 was very challenging for the Bennington Police Department. We are short-staffed. We have not ever experienced the violence that we've experienced in 2022. And in preparation for fiscal year 2024, we took some of these things into consideration, and we are working diligently with our community partners in trying to change the behavior of people that reside in and around Bennington by bringing in services and working again with our community partners, working with state and federal as well as other municipal law enforcement agencies to try to change some of this behavior that is not only being experienced in Bennington but around the entire state of Vermont. In fact, we are hopefully soon going to be meeting with a representative from the state of Vermont to see what else can be done in and around Bennington. So one of the challenges that we face is our ability to recruit and retain law enforcement officers. This is a statewide and nationwide problem. As you all know, you've heard me say it before, the Bennington Police Department produces well over 80% of the criminal cases in Bennington County. We are very fortunate to have the dedicated staff that we currently have. Yes, we are down 8 positions. With that being said, we are working very hard at recruiting additional members. Without getting into many details, we have 2 people in the queue right now that just polygraphed this week. I am pleased to say that they're both female and have a huge desire to become members of the Bennington Police Department, which we're very happy about. And so far, so good with their backgrounds and things. One of the other problems that we face that I think is important for everyone to understand, I know all of you understand, but for the community to understand, is right now the Vermont Police Academy is running an academy twice a year. We are not keeping up with the number of law enforcement officers that the state is losing. And we're working diligently. Lieutenant Grandi is learning the ins and outs of the Vermont Criminal Justice Council and the Vermont Police Academy. We have another officer right now that we are trying to waive to be able to bring on to the Bennington Police Department without having to go through all of the training as required by the Police Academy if you were just starting out brand new. And it's a challenge. So we share that with you and get you to understand that a lot of police agencies in Vermont and within our area are increasing salaries between 8 and 12% so that they can recruit and retain. I know that you will all be having some conversations with Mr. Hurd about the police department contract, but it is important that we take a serious look at recruiting and the big word, retaining officers. We've lost officers to other municipal departments in the area. Those departments reach out to our staff. As you all know, we take great pride in training our people and getting them up to a certain level. But again, retaining those people is what is most important right now. So I share that with you because I want you to know and I want the community to know that we are working hard at keeping this community safe. I think that's very evident. It's very evident with the hard work that was done by members of the Bennington Police Department this year. The attempted homicide and aggravated assault, the jury came back this week and found the defendant guilty. There's a lot of hard work that goes into that. And not only that, but it's the community being involved in providing information. Our witnesses were spot on, and credit to the state's attorney's office as well. I'm not going to dive any deeper into that, but that's just one example of some of the things that have been going on in our community that we need to ensure public safety and keep the members that we currently have. So let's jump forward a little bit. Some of the highlighted items here. Yeah.
Chief, could we ask if people have questions on personnel? Can they ask those yet, or do you want to do your overview first?
I'd like to just do the overview,
Okay.
and then I want to come back. I think Lieutenant Randy and I talked about being able to answer questions about personnel at the end, because I think that's really our highlight here, is recruiting and retaining, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay, so 4,100, 480 insurance, bond, and workers' comp, and also an increase in property assets. Our workers' comp did go up slightly, and we have an increase in property assets. I mean, that's the insurance world. One of our biggest highlights on this list is that we're most proud of is 4,100, 670. Which is safety. Yes, the safety line decreased this year because we thought we could be responsible. However, it does still provide for our mandatory wellness visits for mental health and nutrition. There are still many agencies in this country that want to say things like, suck it up, buttercup, move on, and we're not that department. We have brought mental health first aid training in to help the officers as well as help members of our community. And we are currently working on a contract with United Counseling Service so that we can make sure that our officers do receive education in mental health for themselves, and making sure nutrition is a big factor as well, and educating our people on that. I mean, if our officers aren't healthy, they're calling in sick, they're not reporting for work, and that cuts down on our ability to protect the community. So, we are very proud of that. Lieutenant Grandy touched very quickly on, he's received phone calls. People want to know, people are very pleased to hear that the Bennington Select Board actually supports mental health awareness for law enforcement, and I just want you to touch on that very quickly about the phone calls.
And that mental health well-being is for all members, not just officers. It's our communications department, as well as our support staff. I recently had a conversation, excuse me, with an individual from the Midwest setting up some IT stuff for the department, and he is a retired law enforcement officer, over 25 years of service, and writes a lot of articles for a national law enforcement magazine. And he asked me about this particular topic, and he wanted to know a little bit more about it. And during our conversation, he was just blown away that our department, our community, has taken this initiative with our employees. And he'll be reaching out to us in the spring, and he would like to write an article about Bennington Police.
So I think that's important. It's, once again, the Bennington Police Department leading the way. Again, thank you for that. And we need to keep that going. And again, as Cam said, it really is for all members of the department. My administrative assistant and our records clerk, their work has probably doubled over the last couple of years, and they both come to work every day, and they're part of this. Their mental health is important as well. They take the brunt of people calling and angry, why isn't the report ready, or why can't I have this, or why can't I have that, and so their mental health is important as well. If there's no questions on that, we'll move ahead to police training. Again, this year we're asking for $18,500 in training. This will involve leadership training for new supervisors. This spring we will be participating, late winter, we'll be participating in a promotional process at the Bennington Police Department, and we will be training new supervisors. And then next year, carrying that over, there is going to be additional training in internal affairs investigations, If it's not as simple as just saying, hey, go investigate Lieutenant Grandy, there's a lot more to this nowadays. So we're asking for that money so that we can send people off to legitimate internal affairs investigation training in addition to what we've already had. We look at the amount of $18,500. It's really in the big scheme. It's not a lot of money when you stop and think that we have approximately 35 people that we have to maintain their training at the Bennington Police Department. Any questions on training? I mean, we do pride ourselves in training. We try to stay way above the curve. We're proud to say that our training records are well maintained. And we were audited by the Secretary of State's office, and we did very well. And so I think, if there's any questions about police training, I'm happy to answer those.
I think probably the obvious one is it's level funded. Is that sufficient, or was that, that was a budgetary restraint?
We did that. It's level funded. We did that because we do believe that we can make that work. Lieutenant Grandy and I have had many conversations about police training. Ultimately, we would like to see an increase, but we think for 2024, we're going to remain level funded. And as we promote people and bring people on board, we will assess their skills and then determine what might be needed in the upcoming fiscal year to get them where we need them. So we'd like to level fund this year.
Another question.
Okay, Bruce, and then Jim.
Training at the academy, who pays for that, and what is the cost, and where does it come out of this budget if it's us?
So it depends on what training we're talking about. Basic training at the police academy is paid for by the state of Vermont. We are responsible for salary and providing the equipment and things like that. Other training programs are at the cost of the town of Bennington. For example, we have a couple of supervisors going off to leadership training. The training is listed on the Police Academy website. However, it's done through a private entity, and to send a supervisor off, just the cost of leadership training is $895. So that comes at our expense.
Right. Now, I wasn't quite clear about all of that. Will we have a chance to come back and talk about the academy and its 2 classes a year for basic training? Will we have a chance to come back for that, or is this
you can ask me anything that you'd like right now on that.
Okay. Well, I'm concerned as well, as you can imagine. We're not the only department that's down people. In fact, I went around the state, and virtually every department is down people, and the academy has seemed to be stuck in this same type of schedule as if it were 5 years ago, and everybody may have been down 1 or 2.
Right.
And my issue is that we don't really control that academy in terms of its scheduling. Who does, and how can we get to them to communicate to them? I'm going to be a little bit tougher than I would normally be, but whoever is making the schedule that says that we ought to be at the same level of our frequency of training, of running the academy as we were 5 years ago, they should be able to demonstrate, they should be able to demonstrate that they can actually see the handwriting on the wall. That's not going to be functionally possible for any municipality So
let me address that with you, all of you. Right now, I'm a very active member of the Vermont Association of Chiefs of Police. I sit on the executive board. The Chiefs of Police Association, the Sheriff's Association, is working with a new director, and as well as the membership of the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. They're currently reevaluating basic training at the Police Academy. in my opinion, is unfortunately, they're looking to shorten that training and then place the burden back on the municipality or the state agency that has hired that person to get them additional training as time goes on. There's good and bad in all of that. Could we potentially have up to 3 basic training classes a year if we shorten that? It's possible. However, placing the burden back on a municipal or state agency to now line your people up when you could have just had them there for that period of time, I think is going to defeat the purpose. Again, Paul Doucette, as the police chief in Bennington, his opinion. Okay. The other piece of this, so you know, is we do our best to support the Vermont Criminal Justice Council and the Vermont Police Academy by sending members of the Bennington Police Department to the Academy as training assistants and instructors at the Academy. The Vermont Police Academy, like several other academies throughout this country, is based on volunteer instructors from different agencies. Back when I was a little bit younger, I went to the Academy on a regular basis and instructed firearms. And you know, we have defensive tactics, we have DUI instructors, and we have people that go to the Academy a couple times a year to be training coordinators. Training assistants to assist the training coordinators, you know, to keep people in line and keep them on track and be there to give recruits guidance and things like that. So, yes, we are paying for that. We are, that is on us. However, that's what it's about. Because if we will get a return out of this by sending our people to the Academy to help, you know, instruct new recruits. And I think that's important. We are one of the largest agencies in the state of Vermont, number 6 or number 7 on the list, and we should be doing things like that. So we are being supportive of the police academy, the Bennington Police Department, or the town of Bennington. But right now, it's a challenge. The academy is looking at revamping the way they're currently doing things. You know, the structure of what's happening at the academy right now is being evaluated. There's been a mass exodus of staff from the Vermont Police Academy. No different than any other police agency in Vermont, where they've taken other positions within the state that are much less stressful or what have you. Heather Simmons, the director of the Vermont Police Academy, I think is doing the best that she can with what she has to work with right now. And you know, there is a lot of pressure to get more people through the academy, but at the same time, we can't just send people off to the academy and only educate them 2/3 of the way. So I think we need to focus on that, and we need to stay involved in that.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with anything you just said. It just strikes me that the model that we've utilized over the past 20 years, I mean, when we send instructors or assistants up there, that also means that, I mean, that's a great model for maybe 10 or 15 years ago when everybody sort of volunteered, because they weren't down 1/3 of their force, right? But when we send an instructor up there, that means they're not patrolling Bennington.
That's correct.
And that would be true in Brattleboro and in Montpelier and
Correct.
Anywhere else. And my concern is, and I'm wondering, is there anything that this board can do, and are there people that this board can communicate with that perhaps the whole state needs to look at a different model for doing training, because we're not where we were 10 years ago or even 5 years ago?
So one of our projects that we have with Mr. Hurd and Mr. Monks, Cam and I and others is once I get back in and settled, we're going to be meeting with Colonel Baker, James Baker, and looking at and assessing the town of Bennington, the surrounding areas, and the state of Vermont, and seeing what needs to be done to bring more resources to the town of Bennington, and straightening out and getting the academy fully operational to 3 full-time classes a year is something that is on our list to share with Mr. Baker so that he can bring that back to the Commissioner of Public Safety, Jennifer Morrison, and say, listen, this is what Bennington needs, this is what Brattleboro needs, because Brattleboro and Bennington are in the same boat, they're worse than we are. God knows that Springfield, Vermont is in rough shape, far worse than we are, and these are the things that we need the state to understand, so that we can put more money and more assets into the police academy, and drive that forward. So your point is very well taken, and we are on the same page.
Okay, so it seems to me that communicating with the commissioner as a select board is a step that we can take, as well as legislators who control the purse strings. If public safety is a primary function of local government, and it is, then we need to make sure that there is adequate training for officers. And we need to, in one of the ways, I mean, it's great that we have 2 people who are seeking to enter the department's force. That's great, but they can't be trained until there's a spot for them.
So straight up, they're going to go off to the part-time school in March, which is 2 weeks. They'll FTO until they go to the full-time school, which is probably going to be in August, and we will have them in December.
Yeah, and that certainly is better than 2 vacancies. But everybody in the state needs to understand that can't be the model that we go with.
Yeah.
That's not a model that works.
I think at this point, with the chair and the vice chair and all of you having hopefully solid faith in the manager and Cam and I, as well as Mr. Monks, in meeting with Mr. Baker and expressing the concerns and saying, listen, Jim, we've met with the board and this is their concern and this is what we need to bring back to the commissioner, I think is something that we should do.
I will encourage us to do whatever it takes to get people off the current dime that they're sitting on, because it simply doesn't work. As we're functioning right now, in my personal view, this doesn't work. Okay, I've said enough.
But your points are well taken, thank you.
Yeah, so I think please use this as is helpful. Okay.
I enjoyed the conversation. I just want to say that. So moving along away from education, as you heard me discuss already with the fire department, we are in the process of updating our police radios. This is under 4140 830. You will see that we are asking for funds to replace 12 Motorola radios to the tune of $32,000. That will outfit approximately half of the department. We're doing this, one step at a time. This year's project in fiscal year 2023 was to replace the mobile radios in the cars, which some of them are more than 15 years old, and we're moving along with that. Those have been ordered. The mobile radios were ordered. So at the same time, next will be the portable radios. So this will be year 1 of 2. And so we're asking for the $32,000 to replace half of the radios.
So Chief, the old and the new radios will still be able to talk to one another?
Yes, the old and the new, because we have been purchasing two radios a year. That's just not, it's just not working for us. We can't, we're sending our radios back because the knob doesn't work or the reception's not as good in North Bennington or out on Route 279 with a portable radio. The older radios just aren't cutting it. And it's about officer safety. You got to be able to communicate. Under police buildings, I'm so happy to see this in here. We are requesting through our friends in Buildings and Grounds. We're asking for $10,000. We propose to continue security upgrades, lighting improvements, And we need to do some improvements up on the third floor where a lot of our records are stored and where we have our quartermaster system for uniforms. There is literally damage to the walls where the walls are actually falling down. The plaster is coming off the walls. It's going to be quite a bit of work. Mark Sawyer and Paul Danzero went up with Cam and I. We took a serious look at that, and this will be to hopefully fix some of that so that we can maintain our building. I think, again, just like I said for the fire department, I think Buildings and Grounds does a great job maintaining, but again, we've been in the building for some time now, and we just need to make sure that we keep our building safe for all of our employees. So we need to do some work on the third floor.
Can we just ask, looking at building improvement budget line, it's been steadily decreasing, and this year it took a pretty significant decrease. Is this because the major work has been done, or?
I think a lot of the major work has been done. All of our heat pumps are installed. They did a great job with that. We have a new generator, which was important to us because, as you know, we are the hub when something major happens. They've done well with that. Our male locker room and our female locker room has been improved.
The windows.
Kitchen area has been all redone, that definitely needed to be redone. It looks absolutely amazing.
Windows in the front door.
So, and another piece of that is, as Cam said, we did put windows up on the south side of the building. Proof that was a project, but they look like they belong there, and our staff is already talking. We're not getting that cold draft as the wind blows through those new windows, and so that's what we're looking to do. And again, we're not looking to we're not looking to break the bank, but we're looking to make sure that we maintain our building and we keep our employees safe, and that we have energy efficiency within the building. And I think that we're doing that in cooperation with Buildings and Grounds.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is building related, but it's not really your responsibility. I know that there's a flooding issue at the corner. Is that still a major issue that has not been resolved?
We have engineers who have done some analysis of the various flooding opportunities there, and I think we're coming towards a design, and I'm looking at Dan to see whether or not...
They're doing the analysis of the monitoring that they did.
Okay.
And they'll put together some kind of order of magnitude designs and costs that we can look at. It will not be an inexpensive fix.
Yeah, that's good. I thought that was in process, so just wanted to... It's not good for your building to be flooded.
Well, no, that is true. Because we only have life jackets in the cruisers. So,
But they've been doing a good job.
But honestly, I don't want to have people think that but Buildings and Grounds and Dan and Stu, I mean, they take all of this very seriously. If I send an email to Dan or Stu, they're on it. And I get it. Listen, we're looking at making sure that we can maintain our front steps and reroute the front steps so that we're keeping the water out, and things. And I think they're on top of it. I really do. And we appreciate it. So. All right, so hot topic under police equipment, 01 4180 650. We are so pleased to say that on Thursday afternoon, Motorola Solutions dropped off our new body cameras. It's not that simple, folks. It's not that simple. So Motorola Solutions dropped off cases and cases of equipment, and poor Lieutenant Grandy pulled out what he had for hair because he is currently our IT guy, along with coming down to my office to vent about it. And so we have our work cut out for us. In under 4180 650, the 28,130 is part of our 5-year agreement to replace our current body cameras, and keeping in mind that our body cameras will be replaced at year 3 at no cost. So instead of what was available to us back when we bought body cameras the last time, that when the body camera fails, it's not as simple as you can't just buy a new battery, you gotta buy a whole new unit. That is not the case with these. We actually bought additional batteries, we can replace batteries, and we do feel that these Motorola Solutions body cameras will be top of line, and we will have top of line. I mean, they are state of the art. So we appreciate you approving it last year, and that's what that $28,130 is. That'll be the second year of the lease payments. And then also under police equipment, it's standard. Every year we replace 2 police vehicles. And I just want to put the options out there so that I'm not hiding anything. Ford did announce, there's a reason why this is up significantly. Ford announced that police interceptors will have a $5,000 price increase for the next fiscal year, which is very concerning to me. Now it's to the point where Chevrolet Tahoes and Ford Interceptors are extremely close in price. I'm going to be honest, 100%, we love our hybrids. We think they're fantastic. We get anywhere from 6 to 8 miles more per gallon of fuel with these hybrids. Ford came out and announced that hybrid vehicles, there is a safety bulletin, came out and announced that these hybrid vehicles should not be used as frontline vehicles. Our hybrid vehicles have spent quite a bit of time down at Coggins. Coggins has been amazing at trying to get our vehicles up and running, new wiring harnesses and things like that. We are still doing well with ours. I know other agencies are not. And that will be something over time that we're going to have to take a serious look at before we commit to buying 2 more hybrids. Yes, the fuel mileage is fantastic, but when they're sitting down at the Ford dealer because they're not running and we're waiting for wiring harnesses, this is a problem. And you know, I look at this and I say, you know, Lieutenant Grandy and I, this is why it's good to be 1 and 2. Maybe someday we'll flip that around. Just kidding. But the issue is that, you know, the Chevy Tahoes are comparable in price, and the Chevy Tahoes are basically bulletproof. They're not, I shouldn't say it like that, they're not bulletproof in that sense, but they don't have as many problems as the Fords. The problem with it is less gas mileage. And so we're really going to have to do an analysis. I put these numbers together, being fiscally responsible, and telling you about what these vehicles are going to cost. We will do a very, very close analysis, and hopefully Ford will get their act together on these hybrids before we spend an extra $3,000 per vehicle for vehicles that have a lot of downtime. But again, they do get better gas mileage.
And are they the only option? Are there any other hybrid options?
We could buy Teslas. But you won't want
Thanks,
to
that gives us a nice...
No, I'm just trying to make you laugh a little bit. Really, I mean, electric vehicles, you know, are really, I mean, they're now Ford is now talking about making a Ford police responder truck that is all electric. I think that, I mean, that would cost us about $110,000 per one without an upfit. I mean, these are things that are, you know, I mean, we're talking the Jetsons age, right? We're all old enough to know who the Jetsons are. We look at the Jetsons and we never thought we'd be able to FaceTime when we watched the Jetsons. Now we FaceTime. These vehicles that they're coming out with now, the prices are so high. So Ford is an option. Chevy is an option. You know, the good news is you know, those are the 2 major brands that I would stick with as the police chief. It's very difficult to get vehicles right now. You know, I mean, if Dodge had something that was comparable, that was available, you know, we could look at that. I know that Dodge has said that, you know, they're bringing back the Durango, but it's hard when we're geared up for Fords and we have tires and we have equipment, and now that we have a fleet maintenance coordinator and we're going to stock the parts, I don't want to start stocking parts for Dodge, Ford, and Chevy. So anyway, that's the short version. I just want you to know up front, you know, we will wait and see if Ford changes their mind before we buy hybrids that potentially are going to be problems down the road. As you all know, we are very responsible with our police vehicles. We used to change vehicles every 2 years. Now we're changing vehicles every 3 to 3.5 years, give or take. And I think there's a tremendous cost savings there because we're maintaining our vehicles, and we are very much looking forward to the fleet vehicle maintenance coordinator position and being able to hopefully save some money there. So, all right. So,
should we? Do you think there's any merit in postponing buying these till the dust settles?
Because what happens is if we fall behind, then we're running into maintenance costs, and then we got to catch up. I think budgeting for these, making sure that we're buying the right vehicles, which I will do, is the answer.
Chief, what is the difference in cost between the Ford Hybrid and just the Ford Interceptor?
The additional cost for the Interceptor is $3,000 per vehicle. So really, if we made the decision in the next week or so that we weren't going to buy hybrids, we would only really be deducting $6,000 from that line. I would caution and ask that we leave that intact, and hopefully Ford corrects the issues before the next set of hybrids is built. Because again, listen, straight up, the hybrids are quicker, they're quieter. At crash scenes or on traffic stops, the engine shuts down, but the lights continue to flash. That's where we're saving money, and I think it's great. I just think Ford needs to correct the issues that they currently have with the wiring harnesses.
Is that why they're not supposed to be used as frontline vehicles, is because of the issues they're having, or?
Yeah, because of the downtime.
Okay, so if the issues are all resolved, they can be frontline.
We
okay.
would use them as frontline. We're still using them
right.
as frontline vehicles, but we have had some issues.
Okay.
And again, I'm not here to sell any particular dealership, but our local Ford dealership has been very responsible in taking care of us.
Okay.
Other questions?
Is this general question time?
So we're going to go back, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Back. All right. So I just want to share with the board. I know that we've had our meetings with the board, and I want to tell you that we currently have, and this is more for the community to understand where we're at. We currently have 2 grant-funded positions. When you look at the police department budget as far as salary, we currently have 2 grant-funded positions. One is within the Child Advocacy Center. We have a detective assigned there. The state of Vermont gives us $60,000 a year so that we can provide that detective. A lot of the cases that are done at the Child Advocacy Center by that detective are Bennington cases, and there are other departments assigned there. So when you look at the overall, there's $60,000. This year, as you all know, we added an advocate position within the police department that is also grant funded, and that brings us almost $90,000, maybe a little bit more than that overall. She's not making $90,000. And so, there's money that I just want the people in the community to know is coming back in to the town of Bennington. So when you look at this, you're not saying to yourself, "Holy, what is all of this?" But the detective position and the advocate position overall brings back $156,000 to the town, or I would say the police department, but it really goes general fund back into the town. So I think that's important. The other thing that's important here is because of our staffing, and because we're running mobile data terminals in our police cars. We have new body cameras. We have computers that need to be installed in the office. Everything is tied together. We fully support the town in obtaining an IT person, which will be shared. I'm assured that the IT position will be shared with the police department. It would make Lieutenant Grandy and I much happier to not have to crawl under desks, plug things in, unplug them. I mean, we're already out there answering calls, executing search warrants, and doing things that other administrators don't do. And then to top it off, being IT, with the lieutenant doing 95% of that IT work. When a computer goes down, it's up to him. The town really needs an IT person.
Yeah,
and I know that pitch has been made. We did take a patrol officer position out of the police department budget. And maybe at some point you'll hear from me and I'll ask for that again in the future. But right now we feel that is our best move so that we can get our computers up and running and make sure that our body cameras are tuned in and that our mobile data terminals are working. So we feel that's best. That's approximately $60,000 that has come out of the police department salary and wages line so that we do support the IT position, and I think it's absolutely 100% necessary. And I believe that all of you understand that. The community needs to understand that we can't just continue to buy all of these high-tech electronic pieces of equipment and not have somebody to maintain them. So that is a decision that I made. It is not anything that was forced upon the police department. Mr. Hurd, Cam, Michelle Johnson, Dan Monks, we sat in a room, we had a conversation, and Stu did not say this is happening. He asked, and I respect him for that because, listen, public safety is where it's at. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We've had a tough year. I want to say that we are making great strides, I think, with CPARP. We're making great strides in improving communications within the Bennington Police Department, and we will, in the upcoming year, make strides in building our staff back up to where it needs to be, as long as we can recruit and retain. But I think it's important that people understand that there are things that we need to keep this community safe, and we're trying to do it as best we can and be fiscally responsible with this. And I am happy to answer any of your questions or deflect them to Lieutenant Grandy, if that's what needs to be done.
Well, I do want to say that, yes, when you started saying in the body-worn cameras, which I'm going to have to do the IT on, yeah, it was, how about the new IT position? So I think this is really good because we really want you to be able to refocus on the safety pieces. Yeah. All right. So questions. You had a personnel question.
Yeah, I have way too many questions. One of them is really, really brief. When you said you're down 8 positions, I just wanted the clarity. That's 8 officers.
That is correct.
Okay. Check that off. That's good. This is a kind of a general question. It seems like some of these budget items have the potential to ebb and flow based on numbers of officers or numbers of staff. And I didn't know if that was the case or not, like workman's comp, the mental health piece, the education piece. I don't know if any of those are tied to the number of officers as far as what the cost is.
So one of the reasons why in training, for example, we ask for level funding is because the officers that we're going to hire, that's what I said, we're going to hire, right, are going to spend 700 plus hours at the Vermont Police Academy. So we don't really need funding for them. So I'm not going to increase that line when they're going to get a bulk of their training over 6 months.
Okay, what if you had 4 people that came in next Tuesday and wanted to join the force? Then that number's going to have to increase, and that's fine. I'm just understanding that. Yes?
Right, and I understand is that reasonable? Probably not. However, if that did happen, 100% I would go and see Stuart and we would make this happen.
Great, okay. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but as far as the decrease in the mental health line, the safety line, I know you have fewer officers, but the mental health needs may be the same or greater considering the stress that all of you are under. So I'm wondering if that decrease is a good idea. That's not my decision to make, it's a joint decision. You think we're okay?
That part of that decrease in that line, remember we're talking safety here, right? Part of that decrease is not needing as many cases of disposable gloves and things like that.
Okay.
So I apologize for that. I should have been a little more clear on that. There is a slight decrease there based on the fact that we are not looking for all of that. I mean, we were very fortunate recently where, I mean, there were stores, big box stores, for example, recently that came around with trucks loaded with safety equipment. We were responsible. We only took what we thought we could use and what we had room for. So we do have masks, we do have gloves, and we do have things like that. So we were able to deduct that and be responsible.
Okay, so the mental health services.
Mental health is still intact.
Great, okay. And then this is a question, I'm just curious. The two new recruits, the two women that are in the process, what made them choose Bennington versus many other communities that they could have joined the force on?
Gosh, that's a great question. I have to tell you, one of them has worked with some of our officers for the last couple of years and loves the Bennington Police.
Oh.
I don't want to disclose where she's coming from at this point, but just has a very high regard for the Bennington Police Department and thinks that our officers are outstanding, and has decided to make a career change and become a law enforcement officer. The other one, she lives local. The other one lives just over in New York, a little bit younger, and has just wanted to be a law enforcement officer all of her life. Participated in a program in New York very similar to what we have here in Bennington, like Southwest Tech, and came to the interview, very impressive, came to the interview with a book of all of the things that she has accomplished so far in her life, law enforcement related, and that's not like a mugshot or anything like that. Like all the things that she has done well, she has been extremely impressive, and monitors the Bennington Police Department Facebook, monitors all of the things that we're doing in Bennington, and she said during the interview that of all the departments that she could go to, she thinks that the Bennington Police Department is making a difference in the community.
Wow.
So.
Impressive.
Very impressive. And, you can't meet two people that are more honest than, stealing a pack of gum or whatever when you're 8 years old, we don't care. But the bottom line is, it's refreshing because we're actually starting to see more applicants. We're starting to see a return on things that we are doing in this community. And I'll give you credit. Things that we're doing with CPARB, things that we're doing within our community to keep the community safe. The arrest ratio for violent crime in Bennington and not just leaving one call and jumping to the next, the follow through. Our new experience camp, not gloating or blowing our own horns, but our new experience camp is just so well known in New England. And people want to copy. We've gotten calls from people that want to know if we can come to their agency and help them set up a new experience camp. So I think all the positive things that we're doing in the community, that we have been doing in the community, people are taking note of that, and they want to be involved. Listen, I told you once already, our staff right now that we have is extremely dedicated. They're working overtime. They're making the community safe. They're doing all of the right things, and that is coupled with us working with our community partners, working with the state attorney's office, future project with Commissioner Morrison and Jim Baker, bringing everybody together and really seeing what this community needs. And I think that is what's going to attract people to want to work here. The one thing that we need your help on, and Sarah has been great feeding me information, is housing. I mean, if you were to say to me, because I know you're going to ask me, Ms. Connor, you're going to ask me, what can we do? We need housing, affordable housing, so our people can come here and live here. And I think that's, that goes with the school system and everything else. But, and I know we're working on it, but the bottom line is that we have people that are very interested in Bennington, and that's the way we want it to be, because we want to be community oriented here, and do all of the things that we need to do to make it right. So,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
In terms of the salary and wages line item that you have, does that include the 2 new positions that you're talking about? Or will that increase?
Oh, no, that's it. That's for the upcoming year.
Okay. And then we say we're down 8 positions. That's out of how many?
So we should have 26
26.
law enforcement officers, and we're down, technically on paper, we're down 7 because we do have someone that we're working on FTO. We will be employing these 2 people. They did both pass their polygraphs and their background investigations. Now it's off to occupational health for physical assessments and things like that. So, when we say we're down 8, that means that we look at it as level 3 certified officers that are able to do whatever we ask them. Okay. Level 2 certified officers are not able to do all of the things that we would like them to do. So technically, in the next couple of months, we'll have 3 level 2, or 3 people working towards level 2 that will be riding with field training officers. So if we want to be on paper and me being 100% correct with all of you, we would be down 5. And we have a couple of people that we're sending for testing that are very interested. Our staff has come together, and we've created a little program where they're going to be able to go to some of the community events. I don't know if any of you have been to the job fairs where people set up their little tents and talk to people. I've got people that are lined up that, in fact, we just bought the little tent. It says Bennington Police, it's got the backdrop, it's got the tablecloth. We're going to use it for community events as well, and that's part of our community policing program. And so we're on track, and we've been up to Castleton University, the lieutenant and I and others, trying to recruit students, from Castleton. It's amazing to me when you sit in a class of 50 some odd students and only 3 of them really want to get involved in law enforcement. They all want to go work for the federal government and be TSA and all this other stuff. But that's fine. We're still doing our best, but so we have plans for the upcoming year, and we're going to do our best to fill those positions.
And the bottleneck is going to level 2 or level 3 is the academy?
The bottleneck right now is getting qualified people that can get through all of the testing and then get to the police academy when we're only running 2 academy classes a year for level 3. And,
competing with other agencies trying to fill those same spots.
That's really one of our toughest things. And I'm not here to beat you up for money. I think that you guys have been, a challenge at times. But at the same time, years ago, we had select board members that wanted us to put plows on the front of our police vehicles and plow parking lots in downtown.
That is true.
We responded to over 13,000 calls this year for service. And last year we were at about 11 with far less people.
Right.
And I think that's important for all of you to know the dedication of the staff that we currently have. But to answer your question is, right now the bottleneck is getting people trained, and it's not just that. When you are not certified, you are out of the academy. You have to ride with somebody. So now an officer has to respond to a call, take care of the complaint, whatever it may be, and keep an eye on their trainee, and then do the report on the call that they were on, and then at the end of the day, before you go home, complete this very lengthy evaluation, and then we have to maintain all of that. So it's not it's challenging all the way around. Not blaming the police academy, not blaming anybody. It's just, we really need to, we really need to fine tune the way we're doing things. Yes, hold new officers accountable, but at the same time, making sure that we have the people patrolling that we need. And also, I know I said it a few times, working with our partners to make sure that we are, that we're working together with a common goal. And right now, the state's attorney's office is working with us. I want you all to know that we are huge supporters of different programs. We don't always, I know I said that we make the most arrests, but we're also doing a lot of restorative justice programs. We love CRJ. We just did a training for restorative justice, a day-long training with CRJ, and there are a lot of people that deserve that opportunity to go to restorative justice because they made a mistake. And we firmly believe that. We have the ability to directly send people to CRJ, and we don't send everybody to court. But people have to be held accountable for their actions, and we do believe in restorative justice. And so those are all things. Listen, years ago, it was down to business. You got your work done, you sent everybody to court, and what happened, happened. Now we have different programs that are available. We're really accessing those programs. We're taking advantage of those programs, and we just need some more bodies to make all of this work. So.
Gene? Yes. Just two quick questions.
Yes, sir.
Again, it's personnel related. Can you tell the board how many students can the academy take in any one session?
Well, Bruce, that is a great question.
I know.
Because
I asked it for a reason.
When I went to the police academy, first, last, biggest, best, okay? We were the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
We had almost 50.
Right.
We didn't graduate 50 because a couple of people left.
Right.
But now, I think the current academy class has 24.
Yeah.
I think it's around that.
Because they had several people drop out. So the academy is looking at this and saying, well, what changes can we make? So they start with 36, I believe, is what the max is, and and that's it. So when you look at the attrition right now in Vermont, as I said before, we're not even keeping up.
No,
I mean, right now for the Vermont State Police to get everybody on board and fill all their positions, they probably need at least 2.5 academy classes just for themselves.
I know. Yeah, that's why I asked the question. That's one. But you mentioned the case that was clearly in the paper this last week. What does that do to the number of officers that you have available when there's a trial at what we used to call district court, criminal division?
4 on subpoenas, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So we had 4 officers subpoenaed. They had to appear at the start. The state's attorney's office did an amazing job. This trial was closed out in a day, and then it was up to the jury, right? So we're backfilling. We're backfilling on overtime, and we're paying people overtime to be, at the court. So that's what that does. But at the same time, it was a positive result, and I'm
Sure.
not surprised by the result.
No.
But it's the hard work that goes into it. And again, we have to give credit to the witnesses. But I think, there's other cases that are going to be coming up that are far more complex. It could be week-long, 2-week-long trials, and it's backfilling and people having to cover. It's not like we do our best to save that money. If Ms. Jenkins said to me, okay, I need Chief Doucette here from this time to this time, that would be great. Bruce, Paul Doucette might get on there and be done in an hour. Well, where's Lieutenant Grandy? He's next. So the people have to be there. They have to study their reports. They have to know what's going on. Especially at trial. You can't have all of these documents sitting in front of you at trial. You have to remember. And these are things this is why I say my staff is dedicated, and so, yeah.
Sure.
Backfilling is the answer.
Yeah, so I mean, when you say backfilling, what we're really talking about is overtime, and that's part of where it's not the only place where overtime is, but I just want the public to understand that, you know, that's all good, but we actually need the people in these positions in order to be able to be fully functional. And I, for one, really appreciate the folks who are doing double shifts to cover for the folks who are sitting at criminal division necessarily, but need to be there.
One of the questions we ask now during interviews for prospective law enforcement officers is, what do you think it takes to go from a complaint, doing the criminal paperwork, and where does it go next? There's too much of this stuff on TV where, you know, an officer is involved in a shooting and that afternoon they're involved in a second one. There's too much of this, an officer is involved in a homicide and the next day they're back at work handling another one. That's not how this works. And a lot of people really do believe this is how things work. And I mean, the homicide cases that we had this year, for example, we relied on the Vermont State Police to bring their crime scene team down. We decided, in talking with Dan and Stu and Cam and I, we're actually going to send our people away to crime scene school this year, which is part of the training budget. And we're going to send them away so that we can do a lot of this stuff in-house. If we have the equipment, we can do it. If we have the training, we can do it, and we won't have to rely on other agencies. Yes, it's fantastic to bring in some of these other agencies and work together, but there are times where you have to wait, and this is definitely not a dig, be clear on that. When you have to wait 4 hours for the crime scene van to show up in Bennington, that's a long time. It's a long time of standing around while things could be getting done. And
while evidence may be...
Right. So you know, we are looking at the big picture and making sure that we still have our partners that we can rely on, but at the same time training our people, because we have people that are very competent that can do this. And we have the training location, we have the training picked out, and then it's a matter of going there and coming back with a list of things that you need, and then we'll make that happen. So,
thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
I do. We have a couple. Okay, I just wanted to follow up. I mean, hiring is one thing, retention is really important because, yeah, if you've gone through the training, you want to keep them. And so I just want to clarify for all of us. So the elements in retention are one, appropriate financial compensation.
Right.
Making sure we have equipment that's going to keep everybody safe. Making sure we're doing the level of training and wellness support that we need to do. Are there other things that the select board or the community should be thinking about in terms of helping retention be as strong as it can be on the police department?
I mean, I'll go first on that. I think that the majority of my people understand some of the changes that we've experienced and continue to experience within the Bennington Police Department. I also think that it's important that the community understand that we want to be open and share some of the things, hence CPARB. But I think it's important that accurate information gets out. This week's banner article is just an example of misinformation that upsets my people. I think it's important that the police department, as well as the entire town staff, knows that they are supported by the select board. We know that we're supported by the community. That was evident in the survey. It's evident around the holidays when all that terrible food, it's good food, but all that food comes in and sits on the counter, and the notes and the cards. Again, more compliments came in this week about officers. It's tough. It's tough to receive a Vermont civil violation complaint from an officer and then sit down and go to the website and say, hey, I got a ticket. But man, your officer was amazing. And I think that those are some of the things that happen that we don't blow our horn enough on. And I think to answer your question in a few words, is to make sure that the town staff, especially the police department at this point, knows that the select board really does support the Bennington Police Department in all of our efforts in keeping this community safe. And but at the same time, we also need to be transparent. And I think the majority of my staff understands that. But again, support from all of you. There's nothing that says that you can't stop by and say hello. There's nothing that says that you see my people out and about, that you can't go over and shake their hand and say hello to them. I mean, everybody knows who all of you are, and I think that you may not know who all of my people are, but when they're in uniform, you can go and speak to them. And I think showing support is the biggest thing. Kim?
Yeah, I think for the patrol division and the detective bureau, I think retaining is going to be huge, making sure we don't lose any more people, and then building our staff back up. We have not really closed out any time off for our members. We try to give as much as we possibly can and still provide a level of service to the community. I said, and I've been very vocal on this, our people are tired. What's going on in this community, and if you just look at 2022, it was just a very extremely busy year. And to reiterate what the chief said, our people are top notch and very, very dedicated. And even though we have limited staffing, they were able to address some of these violent crimes that we're seeing on a regular basis and get the job done. And I think that is huge if we are able to support our personnel with additional personnel. So, it's not just, you look at some of these violent crimes that you see every day in the paper, and not to highlight any of them, but those things are occurring, and those are the things that everybody are talking about. But what we lose sight on are the other things, the day-to-day operations, those other 13,000 calls in 2022 that our memberships are doing, our communication staff are taking, and I think that is important to our staff, is to make sure that we provide them with additional resources and personnel.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, go ahead.
So, I wish we had more officers coming in that I could help house, but besides that, have you found any help in the job fairs? Have you found any candidates to the job fairs?
This is our start at job fairs. The tent shift yesterday. This is going to be our start. Going to some of the, like I said, we went to Castleton. We didn't get any applications out of Castleton. There's a university down in Florida that wanted more information. Right now, for us to, this is just an example, for us to go to Florida and try to pay somebody to go down there and set up. I mean, Florida is advertising in New York City, trying to recruit New York City police officers to go down to Florida. So we're trying to, we need to stay, I think, within our region here. I have recently had a conversation with a local young man who works in a different New England state, who just loves what the Bennington Police Department is doing, and said that he would be calling back in April or May to see if he and his wife want to relocate and come back to Bennington, already a certified officer in the New England state. So, I think that we're making a difference, and I think that by starting some of these recruitment events and by having a tent at National Night Out or some community event. I know there's a lot of community events, coming up. It would be kind of fun to go down and just put up a booth. I mean, when we have the Garlic Fest and we have Mayfest and things like that, it draws a lot of people to our community. We've never people love us there. They all want to come up and thank us for being there. So now it's time to take advantage of that and put up our little tent and have people that are coming through our community for those events talk to the police and see what we're experiencing here and maybe encourage them to relocate and become law enforcement here. So we want to take advantage of some of the community events that are going on in Bennington. And it was nice this past year to see the downtown lively, and I think that we're going to take advantage of that.
Bring the dog.
Yeah, the dog. Yeah, I mean, there was a great article recently in the Banner about Gracie and Rob and how Gracie changed Rob's life. But it's not just like that. It's how we change Gracie's life also, because we took her from a bad situation, and she's been amazing. And, Rob's got hopefully a couple of years left with Gracie, and as I've told all of you, we will get another dog program going here, but we need to stick to the basics and keep things going the way they're going and recruit some people.
We did see that the canine supply budget was down a little bit, but I'm assuming that it's not dog food.
We are very fortunate in that area. We won't get into a lot of detail on that, but we have a vendor that is supplying dog food. Rob does an amazing job at getting equipment and things like that. In fact, his canine vehicle is, I think, in good shape. We're gonna switch out here really like the next 2 weeks, and so she still barks a lot, still gets a lot of dog hair on the carpet, but we love her.
Yeah, she's a dog, first and foremost. I just wanted to circle back for 1 second on the 2 positions that are grant funded. Are those grants going to be available into the foreseeable future, or is that something we need to prepare for at some point?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, what else? Oh, this may be too long of a question to answer, and we can take it offline, but I'm curious how the process is, not to beat up on the police academy any more than we already have. How do they prioritize who gets the spots? Is it strictly first come, first serve?
There you go. It is first come, first serve. You must submit the name and packet. There's a packet that needs to be completed. Prior to the polygraphs, my administrative assistant already had the packets complete. We had to wait for the polygraph so that I could sign off and say that these people, or this person, because it's one per, successfully completed the polygraph to my approval. So those will be signed and they will go out on Tuesday.
Okay. I guess my question, I came kind of in the back door, is there's no priority given to communities that are experiencing an increase in crime rates?
No, at this point, that is something that we can discuss with Jim Baker and Commissioner Morrison, but at this point, it is who gets their paperwork in first.
Yeah, and it was just an observation I made when you mentioned that one of the candidates, new candidates, was really interested and pleased to hear about CPARB, and that was one of the outcomes that we were told would happen when there is a community board in place. The first beneficiaries, or not the first, but one of the beneficiaries is the department, the police department, and it's just really nice to hear that that's happening.
Listen, Cam and I will share with you, we have the CPARB conversation with people that we interview because we want them to understand this isn't a gotcha moment. This is a moment where we want to share. Cam and I worked really hard on this new policy and procedures, and now there's still more work. I mean, we've spent months on this, and we brought it to Stu and Dan, and we worked with Merrill, in a meeting and through email, and we want CPARB to see what's going on. I mean, maybe next year we'll get 20, but I highly doubt it. We get very few complaints, and we do it properly. And we think that that's going to be beneficial to us. For example, when we get to bring those complaints forward to CPARB, redacted, and I think people are going to get it and understand it. The word oversight continues to be used by some. That's not the purpose of CPARB. this week's banner article, I was very frustrated. I emailed Stuart, and Stuart very calmly responded, can't control what the banner writes. And it's not a dig on the banner because we have a good relationship with the banner. It's just, you got to have your facts straight before you write an article.
Yeah.
Because when you put the wrong information in there, it's upsetting. So CPARB is a good thing. I think that we worked very hard to get them trained to the level that they're at now. You all have decided to bring Brian Core back. I like Brian, and I hope that we can remain focused with our current CPARB members and drive forward with this. Brian Core said it himself. We're probably the smallest agency that he's worked with. And at the same time, there are a few people in our community that want to see this. There are others that are interested, and we're very interested also to be able to share our findings. And we still have the leeway where we can have the sergeant talk. I mean, if Miss Jenkins gets a speeding ticket and she doesn't understand why she got a ticket versus a warning, and she calls, we'll just say he's a Sergeant Grandy, and Sergeant Grandy's able to explain that, it's not a complaint. It's just a request for information. Mm-hmm. And these are things that the community will understand. It's just going to take time. I mean, CPARB just got off the ground. And, we're looking forward to 2023. I've seen the training proposal, and we're looking forward to it.
I just had no idea that the fact that we're doing this, you're doing this, we are doing this, I guess is more accurate, would encourage someone to want to join the force. I hadn't thought that it would have that effect, and I think that's pretty amazing.
Well, I think it's amazing. I think that people are paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
There are still police departments that are doing things the old way and not getting back to people. I don't see it. We're not gaining. We create lots of mistrust when we don't get back to people and explain the situation. And a majority of the people, when you're done talking with them, understand, and it doesn't lead to a complaint. It wasn't a complaint to begin with. So these are all things that we're going to educate CPARB, we're going to educate the community, we're going to drive forward, and we're going to be a solid police department and a solid community.
Super. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? And then we'll open it up to the community, see if we've got any questions there. All right. Anyone from the community have a question, comment for the police department on the budget? Not seeing any. All right. So I think then we can thank you. This was a really fruitful discussion. As always, we really, really appreciate everything you do. And
Please thank everyone in the force.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so next up, change of the guard. We have the Bennington Rescue Squad here. You want to take a quick break? Let's take a 5-minute break. All right, so let's continue with budget discussions. Bennington Rescue Squad is here. Thank you for your patience. We were apparently more ambitious on our agenda timing today than we were last time. And we welcome, we welcome you and would love to hear from you. You've provided us with some additional pieces of information today, which I assume you're going to go through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, introduce yourself and go for it.
Great. So my name is Art Grew. I'm the Executive Director of Bennington Rescue. This is Brian Pete. Brian Pete is our President of our Board of Directors, and Brian Murphy, who is the Vice President, Vice Chair. So I feel like this is, our yearly ritual, right? So we're coming off of an extremely busy year, right? So everyone's heard, we heard the police department talk about volume. Volume across all of our public safety entities has been up. Coming off of 2022, we saw record numbers of 911 calls. So we had the busiest 911 call volume that we've ever experienced, and that is driven by calls within the town of Bennington. We are seeing call volume right now in our current year that is going to exceed anything we've ever done. We talked about staffing challenges the last time we were here. We've made some great strides in those staffing challenges over the past year. We're still short, as is everybody, right? We've been able to recruit some people from out of the area. We brought in someone from Alabama, Indiana, Connecticut, further away in New York over the past year. Those have been great additions to our staff. Problem is all of them found residence in the state of New York. We did lose 2 applicants because they couldn't find a place to live. So it's been that still continues to be a struggle for us. Our apprentice program, we've talked about the apprentice program in years past, is a great funnel for us to bring people into the profession. And we are trying to drum that up a little bit more at the career fairs. We've been to many of them. We're working with some of our immigrants that are coming in to try to get them in the door through our program as well. So with all of that, some of the challenges we're facing and that we have faced, with that increase in 911 volume, we are doing far fewer transfers or calls from the hospital to another hospital, hospital to nursing home, whatever, than we ever have. That means because we're having to put all those resources into that 911 call. That lowers what we're collecting back on the other side to help fund the organization. Right? So as that call volume goes up within the town from 911, it lowers what that overall dollar figure coming in is. And we're seeing an overall kind of shortage within the healthcare system. So people are struggling with the ability to find primary care. They're struggling with the ability to be able to get into their doctor. They're struggling with the ability to be able to get home health aides. And when all of those things happen, where do they go? They call 911. And so what's happening is we're continuing to see an increased shift of the normal care of people into the 911 system. Now, if you don't have home health care and you need help, and you call 911, that doesn't result in a transport to the hospital. Okay? We get dispatched, we go. A lot of times we're providing that assistance, and there is no reimbursement for that. So as those 911 calls go up, the number of transports that we do that are billable goes down. So these are the challenges that we're facing, and we're also and you got a copy of a document that I'd given to Stu, I believe he might have distributed to you emails some months ago, that talks about some of these challenges, particularly in regards to reimbursement. As we see an increase in the Medicaid numbers in the town of Bennington, that's a dramatic decrease in the amount of revenue that we collect going forward. Our insurance providers are starting to use what they call usual and customary, and that's based on historical collection rates and collection dollars. We all know what's happened to inflation. We can't look at what the cost of operation was 2 years ago is not the cost of operation today, and so that's created a challenge for us. And I know you got our budget request. We're looking at revenue about flat with where we were last year for patient services. We know that the volume is going to go up, but we're not anticipating increases in revenue because, again, we're seeing lowering reimbursement rates from private insurance. We're seeing a shift of payers to Medicaid, which is a lower reimbursement rate, and we're continuing to see that increase in 911 volume, and that increase in 911 volume means a lower dollar figure coming in the door. So we're not anticipating a huge increase there, even though we are expecting, again, record numbers of calls for this coming year. With that, we're looking at, obviously increases in what we're paying our staff. We've done pay raises. We're going to have to continue. The cost of living has not gone down. We'd like it to, but it hasn't, unfortunately. And we're also seeing increases in, everything, right? Workers' comp, healthcare insurance, they're all going up. Fuel costs, the fuel costs for, not only heating our building, but just, vehicles, right? We're on the road every day. Unfortunately, they don't make a hybrid ambulance at the moment. we've looked at it. There are a couple companies that are talking about it. There is one that makes an electric vehicle. They're extremely expensive, and they have a range that won't get us back and forth to Albany. So unfortunately, but we are looking at those options. We're looking at smaller vehicles. We attempted to order 3 smaller vehicles that, with better fuel economy, cheaper cost, we ordered those in April of 20. We don't have them yet. That is the market that we're in. We ended up having to purchase 2 demo units from a vendor that we were able to find last year because we were so far behind in vehicle replacements because we can't get them right now. Manufacturers at the moment are telling us it's 28 to 36 months if we place an order today to get an ambulance. So we're struggling with, and costs have gone through the roof on a new ambulance. New ambulances are about 45% more today than what they were 3 years ago. So, all of these things are dramatically adding to that cost of operation. Again, I'll be happy to entertain any of the questions regarding the numbers. I don't think you want me to go through every individual line, but I'll be happy to. But that's what's driving a lot of these cost increase in what we're seeing from the market, what we're seeing from staffing, what we're seeing from just inflation is driving up these costs. And I know that, Brian and Brian are going to talk some more about, where we are, particularly, fund balance, debt load, where we are with that, and also more about these challenges of where this is going to lead us.
I just wanted to mention, we talked about the endowment that the agency has. These trends are accelerating rapidly to the detriment, of course, to not only our EMS agency, but others around the state. It's going to accelerate that process of using that dramatically. So if you look at that bottom line, we've assumed level funding in there. We've not gotten increases even back up to the amount that the taxpayers actually awarded a number of years ago. But it's accelerating the trends so that this would be a full, if the town wants to have it, then it's going to have to be a full department of the city. This is going on all over the state, and Art can talk better to that point. But we are concerned, and also the value this year in the endowment has fallen quite significantly. We're in a market that both equities and fixed income, as bonds, both fell, which is very unusual. Usually one goes up, the other, if equities go down, fixed income goes up. That's not what happened this time. So they both went down. So that's also increasing our concern. The model's not viable because nobody is paying anywhere near the true cost of service. I think this coming year, just so you know, we're going to have to try to accelerate the conversations. We've tried to have conversations about consolidation, but unfortunately this is Vermont, and people like local control and retaining local control over every aspect. So they actually have not gone anywhere so far, although Art has valiantly tried to actually spearhead that at the state level. I do think that we're going to also look at trying to, at a higher level, initiatives to try to get payers in the system to actually pay closer to the true cost of service. That's the fundamental problem. I have a real problem, but it'll take a lot of legislative action, and that's hard because insurance companies throw a lot of money around in terms of lobbying, but the reality is they're not paying anywhere near the full cost of service, and from my perspective, that is ultimately throwing this cost back onto the towns and taxpayers of Vermont. So I do think that there's a narrative there that actually if people really understand the end result of this, it's really horrific for the taxpayers. But that will take quite a bit of work to get people to recognize that. We've tried to get people to take this on as an issue. And you see associations in this particular industry don't seem to be strong enough to take that on. But it's something that we're going to need to work on to resolve this model to get it to a much better place.
So Brian, are you having conversations with legislative delegation around this? I mean, is there any legislation in the pipeline at all?
There isn't yet right now at this point, and it's been hard. We wanted an industry association to take this on. Art tried to do that, and they haven't taken it on. I just think it's going to take higher level and maybe get the towns involved, because that's the real issue.
Well, what is the higher level on that?
Well, so it depends, right? So, and so this is one of the, we did have some success at the Medicare level on the 30th of December, because we were facing a Medicare decrease on January 1. Okay? That has not, luckily that did not happen. That was, delayed. We got a Medicare rate increase. However, 2% of that rate increase then is held back because of balanced budgeted issues. Originally, they were going to take 4.2% of the Medicare increase and hold it back as a result of the inability to balance the budget. Okay? So, and the reason why I say it depends is because if you have organizations that are self-funded, right, or self-insured. Self-insured organizations fall under federal regulation, not under state regulation. If you are an organization that has private insurance, that's a state regulation. But if you're under Medicare, it's federal. Medicaid, it's local or state. So that's why I say it's difficult to say where that all sits, right? So we know that from the Medicare standpoint, we have a national group that's trying to push that conversation. But from the local level, the Vermont Ambulance Association has not been pushing that conversation at the same level. We're trying to get them there.
I think going forward, we're going to need to get the towns involved across the state, because really, I think that's the only way to get action. Because really, I find it offensive that insurance companies, it's well known during the pandemic, a lot of claims went down. People were not doing, ordinary and customary medical services. They made a lot of money. And these companies, any opportunity they can, they slash rates. So those amounts that we're even getting from the private payers, in some cases, are less than they were several years ago. So that's obscene when people are allowed to write coverage in the state and make lots of money on it. Something as simple as requiring them to pay for the true cost of ambulance services would actually be revolutionary in this area, and then stop the pushing of this cost onto towns, in my view. I think it's wrong. But we'll need to have the help. We'll have to have the help of the towns, because I think that their industry association and group isn't strong enough to carry this issue.
Okay. Well, I was going to hit on some of the points that Brian did, but above and beyond that, I think it's imperative that everybody understand that the current model, you guys all know I've been sitting here for a long time. So since 2017, when Article 17 passed through the voters, our reimbursement from the town has gone down. And we understand that because you guys do a good job trying to create a good tax rate that everyone can afford. Unfortunately, the model that we're following, and we have to continue to follow, is unsustainable. I think that if everybody read the sheet that Art gave them, after reimbursements from all the towns that support us, we're losing $60 a call. We're doing 5,400 calls. The math is pretty easy where we stand. We were asked by you guys in 2017 after the appropriation to come up with a spending policy, which I think was a great idea. And with the help of Brian Murphy, we came up with a spending policy which was created through our funds that we have was 5%. This year, to keep our budget at zero, not in the red, it's going to be 12%. And I have to be honest with you, we're halfway through our year. I don't think we're going to make it. I think that the allocation out of our portfolio is probably going to exceed 12%. So it's edging towards 3 times what our spending policy is. And as Brian said, everyone has a retirement plan. You understand what's happening in the market. Yes, it's temporary. Yes, it's going to come back. Anybody that is an investor will understand that. But for the time being, we are oozing money at a rate that is unsustainable. This model cannot continue. It's not going to be me. You're going to see several new faces over time. I guess only really Jim and the Jeans are the only two people that were here when we started this conversation. But you guys, I'm sure the rest of you were keeping track, and obviously Stu. But we're not sure what it's going to look like moving forward. As we talked about some regionalization, I don't know what that's going to look like. What is regionalization going to look like? We've tried within our district, which is called District 12. Anybody that reads the news understands that it's not a Bennington issue. You've read about the Northshire area having an issue with medical services, EMS services. You've read about Brattleboro having issues with services. We all have the same problem. It's money and it's people. I don't know what's going to happen from here. Hospitals can't move people, and it's not just an SVMC problem. Dartmouth can't move people. I mean, when our office staff is receiving calls from UVM Medical Center asking if we have an ACLS certified paramedic crew that can take somebody from Burlington to another facility that is nowhere in the range of Bennington, Vermont, there's an issue. And they don't just call once. This is what's happening. When Rutland Regional Hospital is trying to move people with Bennington Rescue, it's a state problem. This is not a Bennington problem. But I don't know what's going to happen from here. Where is the regionalization going to take place? And it's not going to take place today. It's not going to take place next year. But something's going to happen. Is there going to be a joint venture between this organization and the town of Bennington and your public safety officer and your fire department? We're very lucky that we have a volunteer fire service. Brattleboro has a paid fire service, but I don't know that their fire district is overly excited about taking over EMS management. It's an avenue that is contentious. I don't know that can happen here. We have a hospital that has problems moving people. What is that going to look like moving forward? We don't know. We don't have the answers to these questions. What we do know is the model that we are currently driving down the road in is unsustainable. Eventually, we will run out of money. And I think you guys all know that. We've had this conversation before. It's a snowball effect. We're witnessing the perfect storm. We survived the pandemic. 911 volume is through the roof. Funding is down. Our payer mix in our community, as the chief just spoke about, is not great. Brian just talked about insurance providers. Even people that have really good health care and really good insurance and can afford to pay their bills, the reimbursement rate is not enough. Every time the ambulance leaves the building, we lose money. That's an issue. 911 is up, which means transfers down. We make money, we try to make money with our transfers. Unfortunately, we're doing probably the least amount of transfers we've done since before the pandemic. But we're doing record 911 calls that are not producing revenue. And as we all know, without revenue, we have to be able to pay our bills somehow. And we're doing that through our investments, which is becoming difficult.
We just wanted to alert the group because I think the trends in the industry are accelerating. So we talked about a long arc that this will eventually occur. If you look at those numbers, it's a few years that will be through the investments. So we wanted to call that to your attention. We obviously still have the endowment that we can draw upon our investments, but at this rate, it's not going to be long before they're exhausted and we're at the end of the road, I think we need to start collectively working on some of these other solutions, because I don't think we want to put the full cost of this on the backs of taxpayers at that point. It would be a large increase in the tax rate. So I think what we need to do going forward is working together on solutions so that we don't get to that outcome.
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as the 911 calls, are these patients refusing to go to the emergency room?
Some
Great
are,
question.
yeah, I mean, some are refusing, some are calling because they didn't have another option. You know, it's not, they're calling because they're at the end of their rope from a medical standpoint and they don't know what to do. So, you know, we're getting there and, you know, it is because they couldn't get from the bathroom to their bed, okay, because their home health aide didn't show up. That is legitimately some of the things that we are seeing in the community. You know, now we're not telling these people we're not coming. I mean, they called 911. We go out, we assist them to get them from that bathroom to the bed. That is becoming an increasing trend within the community of what we're seeing. And I don't mean bathroom to bed, right? But that is, so we have times where we might be called out to evaluate, you know, as those numbers go up, we're seeing evaluations of patients who may believe they have some kind of medical emergency, whether that's because they're not feeling well or they talk to a family member somewhere else. And the family member says, well, you need to get checked out. And they said, well, I called my doctor, they can't see him. That family member calls 911. We get 911 calls from outside the state of Vermont all the time for residents in the state of Vermont, right? Because if your family member lives here and you're now concerned for their well-being, you know, what's your next course of action? You need somebody to go take a look at them and make sure that they're not in a life-threatening emergency. So that drives a lot of that. And good intent calls. You know, we have people that are calling because they see something that they believe is a medical emergency. And we get there and it's not. I'm sorry.
Well, far be it for me to tell you how to do your business, but here's just a suggestion. When you do get those cases where, you know, a family member thinks they need attention, bring them to the emergency room and let the doctor adjudicate it. That way you can collect.
We can't though. No. So if you get called Medicare, first of all, there's rules about billing. So if we get to the call and that person is walking around an ambulatory, we cannot bill that transport to anybody but the patient, okay? And I will tell you what happens. You bill that to the patient and they don't, our uncollectible rate or bad debt is going up as a result of those. And they don't pay. Well, when they call 911 3 days from now, guess what? We're going again, and we're going again, and we're going again. And so, yeah, we can bring them to the emergency room. That doesn't help us, you know, and what it's doing is now pushing that cost back on to that person who may not have made that call with the intent of, you know, just saying, well, I'm going to call them and have them come out and sign a refusal. It was a good intent. But, you know.
Basically, Jim, there's a standard of medically necessary to get reimbursed for the call, period. So so that's what he's referring to. If it's not medically necessary to go to the emergency room, you will not get paid for it as the ambulance service.
So you guys make that determination?
We do, based on the rules that Medicare puts forward for us. That's correct.
And actually, Jim, that actually goes even further because the hospital is trying to move patients because their census is full. They're trying to move patients that they don't have any way to move them, but this patient is up walking around but needs to get back to their home or their nursing facility. Well, nobody's going to pay for that. That is an unbillable call. This person is ambulatory. They can go. They can go by a cab. They can go, you know, Green Mountain Express, or they can go by ambulance. Well, whoever they go by, they're either going to pay out of their pocket or they're not going to go because it is not a billable. It's unreimbursable. And I just want to say, I'm going to dig back 32 years from now when I was in the back of an ambulance. We did a lot of these welfare checks, helped people off the floor. We were also a volunteer service. We also had a police department that was fully staffed, that was probably doing a third of the calls that they're doing now. You know how many police officers went to people's house and helped them get off the chair or helped them that they slipped and fell in the kitchen? All they needed to do was be picked up and they were fine and they gave you a hug and said thank you very much. Unfortunately, the chief and the lieutenant are no longer able to do that. When you're fielding 13,000 calls a year, they can't go to people's houses. They can't use their resources. They can barely take care of what they need to take care of. So what happens to that? that all flows downhill and it flows to us. And like Art said, when you dial 911, you're getting an ambulance whether you really needed one or not. And when you call your health provider, if you have one, and if you can find one, and they can't see you for 2 weeks, and you're an elderly person, and you have yourself all wigged out that there's something wrong with you, what do you do? Or if you call a family member that lives 300 miles away, like Art said, they say dial 911, because these people probably live in a metropolitan area where that's what happens on a regular basis. So we go and we talk to these people, we rub their back. Some of them are just lonely. And then they realize, wow, there really isn't anything wrong with me. No, you're okay. We checked your vital signs, everything good. But in the meantime, we've rolled a $250,000 ambulance that has $50,000 worth of material in it and 2 people to a residence for a half of an hour. And in that half of an hour, 2 911 calls could have come in that we should be going to do. But unfortunately, we're not quite ready to leave the first patient that we had. That's the problem. And I shouldn't say really that's the problem. That's the issue that we're trying to. Something that may be able to help this in the future, if the federal government can deem it necessary, is telemed. You know, can we talk to these people over the phone? Or is there a possibility that you're going to be able to be reimbursed somehow for going to a residence and talking to mom and dad and saying, we think you're okay, your vital signs are good, you got yourself worked up, everything is good. If we could build some sort of stipend out for that, it would be great. Because if we take them to SVMC or to any local ER, what's going to happen? It's a snowball effect. Now there's an ambulance transport, now there's an ER visit. So the cost of that call is just accelerating through the roof, and the reimbursement is only a small portion of what actually is billable. So that's an issue, you know, and I know everybody's working on that, the federal government, this whole telemed, you know, I don't know if anybody's used it, but you talk to your doctor, you're on FaceTime with them. I mean, it's the wave of the future, but it's not here yet. So.
Other questions on the board? You have a question?
I'm not sure what I have, but.
So what does consolidation look like?
I'm sorry,
What does the consolidation look like? Where are you at?
I don't know. I don't know that we know that. You know, that's
Basically, it would be, each one of these services has an executive director, they have someone handling HR, someone's doing billing, or they can outsource it, but there's less economies of scale. What you would do, and I think it would help the problem, it's not going to solve all of it, because some of the hard direct cost of the visit are not being reimbursed, but you'd be able to save on the administrative cost. That's basically it.
It affords the ability to fluctuate resources throughout the area, right? So if we consolidate, and this is a conversation we've had with the district services to try to get them to the table, right? Because we understand that as Bennington Rescue, in the way it is now, is not going to make it in the long term. But we're no different than Pownell, than Arlington, than Northshire. We are all in that same boat, right? And the idea was to try to get everybody together before we're at the point where the dollar is zero and you're forced to make a change. We wanted to make the change when everybody had input and everybody had a process to get there. We can't get everybody to the table. We have struggled with this for, you know, and I talked to you guys last year when I was here that we were trying to get this going. We invited members from all of the boards to sit together and try to come up with that plan. And that just, you know, we organize the meetings. We have been pushing them. We're trying to find a way to get them all to the table because it's not, yes, it's the economies of scale, but it's the ability to be able to flux that resource throughout the district. Because like right now, for example, if I have 2 ambulances sitting in Bennington, and there's an ambulance in Pownell, there's an ambulance in Arlington, and there's 2 ambulances in Northshire, and the hospital, you know, let's say that we happen to be busy, right? And both of our trucks are out on 911 calls, and the hospital has a patient, one of you goes into the ER and is having a heart attack, and you have to get to the cath lab at Samaritan, okay? That's not you have to get there when you can get there. You need to be there, and you need to be there in the next hour and a half, right? Who's going to take you? If we're all out on 911 calls, guess what? You're going to sit there for probably a couple hours before you leave. because we can't flux the resources within the district because we all look at our resources as individual sections. Because we look at saying that we have a responsibility to Bennington, Shaftesbury, and Woodford, and if Pownell comes over, they're going to bill somebody for that mutual aid. If Arlington comes, they want to bill somebody for that mutual aid. And I don't mean just the patient, right? They want to bill the town. Okay? So how does that make sense? And it doesn't, right? And we've had this conversation, but that's why we're saying we're going to need to push that conversation down the road to somebody else, because we have no control over how that conversation goes with them. I can't walk into a meeting and say to them, okay, guys, we have to do this, right? I mean, I could say that.
But I will say in a lot of parts of the country, things like this are organized on a county level.
Yeah.
And it's much like school consolidation here. That's actually occurred far more organically in other parts of the country because their school systems were already on a county level. They weren't done that way in Vermont. So it's the same thing in the EMS. So they had to have a law to start people looking at consolidating. But it's the same thing here, is that it's just a patchwork of little agencies throughout the state.
So I know that was a long answer to your question, sir.
Why would some towns hold out, I guess, for better?
Well, so understand that's the issue, right? It's not the town. So it's not the town that's holding out, it's the service that's holding out. Yeah, well, but I think it's an important distinction, because I think that the key there to force these organizations to the table is the towns. Because where does that cost come back to in the end? We're sitting here having a conversation with you that this is an unsustainable model in the long term, right? We're being upfront with you, telling you now that this is not going to be sustainable in the long term. Are these other services having that conversation with their towns? And if the towns are all funding them, maybe the town is the one who drives that conversation.
No, I
So,
the agencies within the town, why would they do that?
Because you're talking about to the executive director, and in most cases, you could consolidate all the ambulance services in the entire county, and you'd have one executive director.
So, and so we walked into the meeting, I said, if we do this, it doesn't need to be me, right? I can go back and work as a paramedic. This is not a conversation that I want to be the one, and I don't want to be the one in charge of the district. That's not, but even when you start with that conversation, there's still that resistance to, it's change. And it's going to be a change in someone's role.
That makes it very clear.
No.
So it sounds like it's not Bennington, the town of Bennington, that needs to be putting the pressure. It's Shaftesbury, Pownell, Manchester.
Well, I mean,
Shaftesbury's part of us.
Part of us, but it's the matter of getting everybody together, but, I've been around for a long time, you didn't play in anybody else's sandbox. Well, unfortunately, the sandboxes are getting closer together, and we need to make a bigger square, and everybody needs to be in it together. But I agree with Art 100%. I don't know that that's necessarily driven within the organizations that are doing EMS. That may be a town thing. And that's going to be a long discussion, to maybe give Sarah a little bit better perspective. I think that, there's maybe a better chance of some sort of consolidation through the town or the hospital or something. I don't think you're going to see a county-wide right away.
Yeah, that was an example. That's
I don't think
a
you're
hard
going to see, obviously,
sell.
we aren't New York, where there's Rensselaer County and there's Remo, which is Rensselaer County. The whole county is together. That's not Vermont.
But Vermont doesn't operate by county anyway.
We do not operate by county.
And that's a psychological issue but it seems to me one of the things that this board could do would be to invite the other town boards to a discussion regarding this issue and our mutual funding of EMS services, because that's as endowments, and I don't know what anybody else's endowment is, any of the other agencies, but yeah, I would assume a number of them have little or none. The town support, obviously, and I use that word town, not just ours, but everybody's, is going to go this way.
Correct.
And I've been thinking for a number of years that this is an unsustainable system. And while it's true Medicaid, I mean, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, their funding model is basically not to fund.
Right.
And, I mean, if I look at I look at my reports and I get, I'm on Medicare and I get my reports and they're saying, well, we're billed X and we paid out X minus 80%. And sometimes that makes sense because, people bill at rates that seem unrelated to actual costs. That's not the case, it seems to me, with EMS services, as a general rule. So I have a couple of quick questions, just so that I can be clear. The 911 volume that you're receiving, that right now was at the last measurable point around 5,400 calls? Is that, or am I just off?
Those are overall calls.
Those are overall calls. So
that includes refusals, non-transports, transports, and 911s.
So our 911 volume this year is going to be about 4,500.
Okay. And what is that in relationship to, say, the year before? Can you, roughly? I don't need an exact number.
Yeah, so we're up, so since 2021?
Yeah.
It's a 15% increase since 2021.
Yeah. And the 911 calls are the ones specifically where you lose chunks.
Yep.
Every time.
Yep.
The only lull we had, obviously, was COVID.
Right.
And that was a very short lull.
Yeah.
Well, there was extra funding, which helped.
Correct.
Yeah. Right. So we'll talk about COVID as an anomaly period. The real period is the period where we're talking your endowment numbers going down partly from valuation of investment, which we've all experienced, or a number of us have experienced, but particularly distressing is the withdrawal of principal, basically.
Right.
Especially at a low point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a tipping point in this because the more you pull from principal, the less interest and income you have that you can actually, so you start, I've seen agencies do this where they start pulling and pulling and pulling, and then all of a sudden it goes off the table.
Right.
And realizing that it's all dependent upon where market forces go, but are we talking 5 years for that point, roughly?
At what we have dollar figure wise?
3 at the most.
3 or 4, if you look at those numbers.
Yeah, I was
they're shocking. So.
But no, it depends on market valuation too.
Right, but somewhere between 3.
Obviously, we're not going to sustain where we're at now.
Right.
And obviously, to speak of that, I'd like to toot our horns a little bit and say, since 1963, because this is going to be our 60th year, since June of 1963, we've been very well compensated by the members of this community. Secondly, we have been very good stewards of our money. That is important. And I'll let Brian Murphy talk a little bit about it because we had a Zoom meeting with our investment firm in December. And I'll use a terminology that some people, hopefully everybody understand. We beat the street. So, but I'll let Brian discuss that.
They basically reported that, and we changed, you may recall a few years ago, the investment advisors and went to a unit of Oppenheimer, big company, but they're managing the investments now, 60% roughly, I think is fixed income. But both in fixed income and equities, they beat, it's still a loss, but the name of the game is to outperform the market in the benchmarks, and they outperformed in both cases. So we were very pleased about that in terms of that report.
Can I just want to say, we deeply appreciate everything you're doing for the community, as a community, for us personally. I also am really remembering this conversation last year, you guys were going to pull together the organizations, and we asked you to come back to us and let us know how that was going. I am struck by the fact that every single year we have this urgency during budget time, but that we don't hear, there is no follow-up with us during the year. And I appreciate that you are a separate organization, you're not part of the town, but it is at some level extremely frustrating to have you come once a year and say, the building's burning down, but in between, we don't hear anything that we can do to be advocates for you or to help pull people to the table. So I'm very, very, it's frustrating because last year, we discussed this very meeting that hasn't happened yet, and that the town was very willing to help.
Actually, Gene, it has happened, and it was happening for months until attrition happened. You had some contention in the North Shire, which ended up, and now you have a new town manager. So now there's a whole other set of rules. So they've gone this way. The executive director in Arlington has decided to leave his position, and they are currently under the guidance of their board. So the person that was part of the team, if you will, to consolidate is no longer there. So basically, and then unfortunately,
And these are all very recent events.
We had a death in Pownell, which was catastrophic to the community.
Yep.
So we're the only ones left. So there's no one at the meeting but us.
And these are all fairly recent events, because we're hopeful that we could push this, because we were organizing it and trying to push it forward. And it's just in recent weeks, we're like, well, we have to just do something completely different. This is going nowhere with these groups. They're moving way too slow. They don't share the same vision. I think that combined with that, like I said, you're going to save some administrative costs. It's not going to solve everything, because there's still going to be a gap between the actual cost of service and even with some administrative savings in there. But it would help and put us on a different path. But I think we're going to have to come back, Jeannie, and this is, we were holding out hopes that the industry itself would start aligning itself and doing what it needed to do, and it's not happening. So we're going to come back to you to be partners in this in a much more fulsome way going forward.
And that the discussions, maybe, I'm thinking maybe less last year, but in years previous, about the hospital, conversations with the hospital about partnerships with them, is that just not a feasible plan?
Well, I wouldn't say that that's not a feasible plan, but I would say that that hasn't been moved forward yet, or hasn't been moved forward at all. You have to remember that our local hospital is merging with a much larger entity, so I think that would have to take place first, and really that's a discussion that may take place in the future, but I have to be honest with you, sitting where I've been sitting for the last 30 years, that's not going to be great for you guys.
In terms of?
In terms of if Bennington Rescue and whatever the Dartmouth-Hitchcock SBMC turns out to be, collaborate together, I don't think that's going to be great for your 911 system. Okay. Anybody that's a business person will understand that. When you're losing around $60 per call on a 911 call, I don't think somebody's going to run to your aid.
But that's pure speculation on your part. If you haven't had a conversation with Tom D, I think I brought this up 2 or 3 years ago. And what we were told then was that Tom D would parcel it out, rotation.
Well, possibly.
And what I suggested several years ago now is go and talk to Tom and tell them, let me finish.
Yeah.
We're in dire straits, and we need to be the primary ambulance carrier. He can only say no.
So, Jim, we have had that conversation with him. The problem is that we can't be their primary because we have too many 911 calls. We can't do all the transfers. That's the problem. Right, so, and that's where.
Well, let me
concern-
rephrase it.
But that's
You
where
would
the-
be, you guys would get first dibs.
We do
You would
have-
be the first one that would be called, and if you can't do it, then they go to Deerfield or
We
Pownell.
We do now. But our transfer volume now is less than 12% of our total volume because of the amount of 911 calls we're doing and staffing, right? We would need to add so much additional staffing, and the volume is not consistent to support that. So if we added that staffing, we're not bringing enough revenue to offset that. So there's still a hole. We're at that kind of perfect number right now for the volume, but not for the revenue.
Things have changed. I think the hospital now is seeing, they're reaping what they sowed all these years they really didn't want to have. Frankly, they were benefiting by just calling who they wanted at the time and rotating it. And now frankly, all the agencies have eliminated the extra capacity because it was too expensive to just have people on standby in case the hospital may call you. All the agencies, including ourselves, had to frankly eliminate that excess capacity, and now frankly they're having trouble moving people out of the hospital.
Well, I
think there might be a
strongly
different
suggest,
dynamic going
I
forward,
strongly
Jim.
suggest that the three of you go and talk to Tom D. I mean,
We will.
Bennington
We will.
Rescue
We're
Squad,
planning to do that.
the
We're planning to
Bennington
do that.
Rescue Squad helped for every expansion that the hospital did, probably over the last 40 years. And they were partners when it was an all-volunteer crew. I remember because I knew friends whose parents were on there. And I think I don't know Tom D. well, but he's a compassionate man. And if you lay it out like you've laid it out before us, I would be surprised if you couldn't.
I think he knows where we stand.
You may think, but you can't say definitively.
Yeah, it's a different era. I think might have a different response, Jim. You're correct.
Good.
Yeah. Seems to me that there are at least 2 or 3 things that need to be done sooner than later. One, I do think that this select board needs to be in communication with other select boards of other towns in the region to invite them to a discussion around EMS services and the funding of EMS services from town to town. That may be unrealistic, I don't know, but unless we try it, the other piece, and the bigger piece, is communication with legislative staff and administrative staff within the state as well as nationally. I would encourage, and I guess thirdly, I am not convinced that the people of Bennington understand this situation. And so it would be incumbent upon you, I think, because you're the most knowledgeable, to be communicating this to the constituency that you serve. I don't think they know that every time you respond to a 911 call, you are losing money the moment you drive out the door. And that the chances of getting that money back right now under the current funding system is nil. We only have 2 or 3 major medical insurance providers in this state and in this region. And there's one really big one. And they're not interested in reimbursing, it seems to me. And they won't be unless the state board actually tells them that they have to. And the only way you get to that board is through political pressure. So it would be, I don't want to be back in this, I don't want anybody to be back in this situation 2 or 3 years from now when the numbers are 0.
Us either.
I know, none of us do. So it seems to me at least a multi-pronged response, one specifically by this board, but several actions by you, maybe with the assistance of some and others in the community and our legislative team, that might be a way to begin to address it. I do agree consolidation has to happen. And no, the agencies will not do this voluntarily. And I am not overly convinced that even the towns will want to do this, but I do think it needs to happen.
I
But-
agree 100% with you.
There you go.
I
I know.
Just to add to that, I think you're right. There is a portion of the people that we serve that we perhaps need to educate, but I'd also like everyone to remember what our payer mix is. There's a lot of deaf ears, and I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Yep.
Well, and going back to discussions we've had before, the town gave us that money, the citizens of the community. We do feel obligated to go out. There are calls that you go out there thinking that you're going to help someone and they go on your merry way, but in fact, they actually do need to go to the hospital. So if someone calls 911, we receive that money from the community, we feel really obligated that we have to go. So, and it's an important service. Let's face it, the police don't have the capacity to do this anymore. So somebody has to do it in the community.
Other questions?
I just wanted to follow up on Bruce's point of your reimbursement. I didn't realize how you were reimbursed as well. I didn't realize that. Correct me if I misunderstood this again, but I didn't realize you were reimbursed as more of a transport and not as a medical service.
Correct. That's correct.
That took me quite a while to wrap my head around, and I'm still wrapping my head around it.
Yep.
So I think following up with legislation and trying to correct that is really something to work on. It's pretty insane to me. I still don't understand it.
We all agree that it needs to be fixed. We all agree that of how it needs to be fixed, but I don't think that we're the driving force to go, it falls on deaf ears. Little Bennington Rescue falls on deaf ears, and even at our district level, I think this is bigger when you're going to the legislature. You're trying, as Bruce said, you need to have a conversation with the insurance commissioner. Well, that just doesn't happen overnight, and when I say we, I mean everybody doesn't have the pockets to go to Montpelier and start doing some lobbying.
No, but
as
we
the
did.
Insurance company does.
But Brian, I guess I am definitely feeling frustrated. Part of the frustration is this fall was when the legislative delegation put together what legislation they were going to push for. When they asked for, for input on what they should be focusing on and for those bills to be drafted. So now they're in session, and so we are behind the 8 ball here.
Right.
So I think at this point, it does sound like it is imperative that Bennington Rescue, which is not so little, when Bennington Rescue, I know what you're saying,
Yeah.
but really address the delegation and see what what can be done, as well, I think, as talking with other services.
Large towns and cities.
Exactly.
This is really a Vermont Ambulance Association push.
Yes.
That's why we were actually trying to do it through the industry, because we thought it would be more powerful, and they just do not seem up to the task.
Well, sometimes people sometimes their power grows as they understand how they can work together. So it just feels like this needs to get rolling, and it really, I think we would encourage you for this to be an ongoing conversation rather than, a once a year conversation. I think we really need to do that. And certainly we can see if other towns want to sit down and talk, but I think if their EMS services are sort of in shambles or in transition or in, transition, then those towns may not be able to come to the table because they don't.
We were hoping to have something to come back to you, because we were at the table. You know,
Yeah.
we were having monthly meetings and everything was going good, and then the wheels started to fall off the cart. You know, you have to, you know, District 12 is also incorporated with Deerfield Valley. Well, they're on the other side of the hill, and they didn't really think that they would be part of the conversation, which was fine, you know, and I gave the reasons why the rest of it fell apart, you know. It's unfortunate that through attrition with people, it just disappeared, and then it seemed like they had other issues that they were working on.
And let's be clear, there's a patchwork of funding models, of course, out there as well. Some towns already far more robustly fund their EMS agencies, and those agencies don't really have an incentive, or the towns may like it just the way it is. For example, the reimbursement, what Northshire is basically giving their agency is much more money on a per capita basis than we get here. So I think that we need to go back and analyze it a little bit for the town and try to figure out logical partners in the process. Because I think that would be best. I mean, for example,
That would be helpful. That would be helpful.
Londonderry has a large endowment. I'm not sure that they're really mostly I understand from Brian, it came from people in Weston, but they're not a likely candidate probably. But let's try to figure out the likely candidates together before we do that.
Suggestion for you, just thinking along the lines of the hospital. Perhaps you could explore with the local nursing homes an arrangement so that you guys are the first one that they call. Have you done anything like that?
Oh, I think we are.
Yeah.
And they'll call anybody. They'll take any ambulance they can get, you know, at this particular point.
But if you could do it
But
contractually.
Good luck with that, because they don't really want to sign their name to the dotted line because they don't want to be held responsible for the bill. They're hoping that the person, the client that lives there that you pick up is going to be responsible through some sort of reimbursement.
We are their service of choice if they're in Bennington already. But they because each patient of theirs is a different situation, they probably not going to sign it overall, and very little of that gets billed back to the nursing home per se. There might be an occasional transport.
We do have one nursing home in town that did want to contract with us, and we did entertain what that would look like. And that contracted rate was less than any rate that we're currently getting reimbursed from any insurance provider. So, I mean, so that was what their offer was to contract, was at a rate that was lower than what we're currently seeing from any insurance provider, including Medicaid, which we said no. I mean, we can't, right? That is just, so we are constantly having those conversations with the local nursing homes. The local nursing homes too have changed ownerships.
Right.
In the past year, with the exception of one, they've changed ownerships. And that has actually made it far more difficult because they're not local entities anymore. So, and when you're trying to contract with somebody who's in New Jersey, they're looking at what New Jersey's reimbursement rate is. And I got news for you, as bad as ours is, New Jersey's is worse. Right? So, and that's what they're holding as the gold standard. Not the bottom, but as the gold standard of a reimbursement rate, and that doesn't fit the cost of operation here. So, but yet we're always having those conversations. We are certainly never telling them, no, we're not going to contract with you. We are looking at every option we can to contract with organizations as long as it doesn't pull resources out of what we're trying to do for the 911. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge, really. So.
Nonetheless, the budget request that you have is a flat budget because we know that the city's got a lot of hard decisions too.
We asked for 10%.
It's not a flat budget.
No, we asked for 10%.
Oh, you asked for 10, sorry.
Yeah.
It's a 10%.
I was going to say, no, it's
It's
not.
10%.
Yes.
But I mean, we do have money in the endowment for right now. It's just that we got to get going on this. So,
Yeah.
And we tried this past year and this has fallen apart recently, and it's like within recent weeks that we decided we just have to go a different route. This is not working with these agencies or the industry association. They just do not share the vision.
And I would encourage you to insist on coming back and speaking before this board at a regular meeting within 4 months.
Okay.
I'm loath to.
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, you tell us where it works for you.
Okay.
We'll come back. I know we've
I
been
think it's gotta be-
communicating with the town administrators,
I
but
think, yes,
we'll bring that back to board.
yeah.
Yeah, no, so we did ask you to come back last year. So, you can certainly come, many organizations come on a quarterly, so every 3-4
Yeah.
months.
3 or 4 months.
And that would help us know what you're thinking, where your needs are, and how we might be able to help.
Great.
Can I just say?
Sure.
Okay, I'm sharing all the frustration that's in the room right now from everyone. And I personally am obviously willing to do anything that would help relieve this situation we find ourselves in. I'm going to ask a question, and the answer is probably going to be that won't work. But I was thinking, as you were talking about being not reimbursed for helping someone off the floor and, bringing them back to their bed or whatever, to a direction that police forces are going in is when someone calls for the police, they often don't need the police. They need a mental health support person. Is there any discussion within your industry of creating a similar model where someone who's fallen calls 911, but they don't need 911? They need someone to help them back to bed or whatever it is. The answer, I know it has to do with there's protocol and you're required to do what you have to do, but is there any?
So there is, and we're looking at that right now as a model for us. Now, it requires a waiver from the state, which we've already talked to them about, but now we have to come up with what that process is. Initially, it's still going to get an ambulance, but may get one person in an ambulance vehicle as well, and that person would stay. Again, takes staffing, right, which is a challenge. So it would take an additional person to do it, but also takes a written plan and a waiver from the state to be able to do that, because your 911 calls for medical assistance require an ambulance response, not. But we are in that discussion.
So there's never an instance where you wouldn't need to bring an ambulance? If someone calls 911?
There would be down the road. The reason why we'd send an ambulance right now is because the amount of information that we get on a 911 call is very limited, right? So a lot of times those fall calls are that lifeline button. So if you hit the lifeline, and I'm sure you all know what the lifeline button is, they hit the lifeline, it comes into 911, and we get it they say I've fallen, right? So we get the call for the person who's fallen. Well, we don't know if that is for the person who fell and fractured their hip, they fell and they're now unresponsive on the floor, or they're sitting next to the toilet because they couldn't get back to the bed. And without that level of information, we have to send the full resource. But once it's determined that it wouldn't be needed, we would release that resource. Some systems get more information. That's just the information we currently get. So that's why I'm saying that.
But to a little bit further than that, Gene, I'll use the word high utilizers that we have had in the recent past. We do consult with UCS about the issues that are taking place, the 50, 60 calls a month at the same address. We try to get services in there to talk to these people, because some people, to be honest with you, are just lonely.
Right.
And it has worked. It's nice when you get the high utilizer that is literally a multiple day 911 call, and you can get them down to a few a month.
Right.
Because that does happen. I mean, people are like, no way. Yet you go to the same place every day.
And like the police department, you call 911, or they have a number if you want to say you found a lost dog. You don't call 911, you call a different number.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was.
Like Art said, when they hit this, it doesn't go to.
Yeah, no, not in that case. That's true. That's a different situation. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it there. This is really a lot to digest, and it's very, very complicated. And I think what I'm finding the most frustrating is so much of what needs to happen is out of our control. We can participate, but it's out of our control, and it takes so long to make the changes that clearly need to be made. So let's find a solution kind of
and they-
person,
We're
and
as
this is not
we're as
easy.
frustrated with you.
Yeah,
Because they need
yeah.
to be made everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, if you read outside of the Bennington banner, this is happening everywhere.
Yeah.
There are spots in the state of Vermont that no longer have an ambulance service. When you dial 911, an ambulance does not show up.
Yeah.
Because their one volunteer
Moved.
gave up.
Yeah.
You know, there's,
And
that's
and
happening.
and it's spilling over into the housing issue as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's everywhere. And teachers,
Yeah.
doctors, everyone is having
That may
that
change
issue.
a little bit, but yeah, like Art said, I mean, we have people that, you know, we had a guy that lived in a bed and breakfast in Shasberry for how long?
Yeah.
2 months?
Yeah,
Couldn't find a- couldn't find
there's
a-
got to be people thinking of creative solutions for this. I'm not one of them, but there's got to be people that are thinking about this. I know it's an issue at the state level.
We had high hopes for trying to get the industry associations to kind of take this on, because that would be the most powerful, I think, way to address it, but we're not there yet. We think they're going way too slow.
Okay, see you in a few months.
Yeah, we're all frustrated.
Yeah, we're all frustrated.
All right, so any other questions from the board? Any community comments? Yes, please, come up.
Oh, we don't have a,
Let's see, you know what I'm going to ask? How about you come, just whirl that around, introduce yourself, and is your question addressed to the rescue squad? Sure.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Tina Cook. I'm from Bennington. How many of your calls are mental health or ADA of this increase? Because I'm thinking you guys could, or have you thought of asking for grants, like the Vermont Community Foundation has mental health grants, and, you know, maybe start soliciting more funds that way for these well-being, mental health issues. And also, talking to the legislature is going to be very important. These insurance companies have made incredible windfalls of funds, okay? And so they should contribute a lot more, and I think the select board and the legislature could do a lot to claw back some of those funds. And I'm also wondering if maybe we can partner with, like, the Visiting Nurses Association, you know, to get them to handle a lot more of the weight of these calls. I know UCS is there as well. But then also, I'm thinking Southwest Tech could be a good long-term solution, because we need to get more LNAs and nurses that can handle these calls. So maybe we could encourage more people to go to school, and I know the state has funding for this. So those are some of my suggestions, and I thank you for your time, but I do want to discuss the overall budget towards the end, if we could. Sure. All right, thank you for your time.
Sorry. All right. Do you, so that was very helpful, thank you. Anything else? Anyone, including you guys, want to share on this? Stay healthy.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we are at the budget wrap-up time. So Stu, I know we have a number of things to discuss, and we've made a few decisions as we've gone along, but not very many. I guess I will open it up to, I think you first, Stu, if you have any thoughts to share, and then I think to the board on any considerations that they have on changes or continued concerns on the budget.
Yeah, I think I would just as soon react to board suggestions and board activities. And maybe, before you start your wrap-up, maybe this would be the time to hear from Ms. Cook, her concerns or her issues that she would like to discuss, and then the board can make some suggestions. We still do have the executive session, and we do have to decide on allocations for the agencies, including the free library, the color library, and the rescue squad.
Right.
I'd like to request a 1-minute break so I can change out batteries.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's a good idea. So anyone that would like to speak to the board, please come up and have a seat at the table. Tina, please.
Thank you very much, and hi, good morning. Should I mention my name again, Tina
Yes,
from Bennington?
yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So I decided to crunch the budget, and I use Excel. So I had some questions about processes. When was the last audit that was performed on the budget?
The budget doesn't get audited, but do you want to speak to the audits?
Yeah, we're actually in the throes of our audit for FY '22.
So we're audited every year?
Every year.
We are audited every year. It's based on the fiscal year ending June 30th, and we generally hear from the auditors sometime either in January or soon thereafter.
And they do that in public meetings, so it is at a select board meeting in unbelievable detail. The community gets information about the charts, colors, everything.
Now, are those posted on
Yes.
the town website? Because I could only find 2017.
No, I think they're available. They're also available through Cat TV. They're available in packets.
Okay,
Yeah, it's widely
I'll
available.
find those, because I was just looking through, also, I noticed that according to Vermont state legislation 1571D, that there is supposed to be a financial controls checklist given to the select board from if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be this is from the cities and towns, the documentation, I have it here, and that the accountant is supposed to provide this annually to the select board, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, does the select board get that every year? Because you guys don't seem.
So every year, our auditor comes in and provides a very detailed overview of that year's audit or the previous year's audit to the select board in a public meeting. Community is invited. Many of the community attend. It's always televised on Cat TV. Usually it's live and it's always recorded. So yes, all of that information is available, but I'm unclear what that has to do with this budget.
Well, because mostly I'm concerned about the controls of the budget. I'm finding a lot of errors in the budget, so I'm wondering what kind, do you guys use Excel? The calculations are off.
So I think, Melissa, is this where you get to come up? So just because of COVID, Tina, if you could move to one side, then Melissa can go to the other side. And, I guess I'm not thinking this board has seen, yeah, occasionally there's a misprint, but it's always corrected. I'm not seeing a lot of errors, but please speak to that. And introduce yourself, dear.
Hi, I'm Melissa Courier. I'm the finance director for the town. Hi, Tina. I'm not sure what particular items that you're talking about, but this is an Excel out of report, a report out of Excel. However, this is maintained in our main accounting system, which we use NEMRIC. Many municipalities do as well. And although I do it in Excel, it's only because NEMRIC doesn't provide a report in the format that we would like. So as I'm going through it, I enter into both systems as a cross-check between the two. I'm not saying that there isn't an Excel issue in here, but if you have certain ones that you'd like to ask, then I'm happy to answer those either here or offline, whatever works best.
Yes, because there's a lot.
So can you just give, you're fixing, okay, yes, it needs to be closer. Can you just give a couple of examples, because it always concerns me when people say a lot. I don't know if a lot means, one.
I'm finding that there is almost $200,000 additional in the budget that we could be using that isn't accounted for. At least that's what my calculations are showing. So maybe I'd like to work with you to go through that. But yeah, like in particular, line by line. Actually, I have a.
Give us a page number and
Her pages are in landscape orientation, so
That's just how I printed it.
yeah, but the pages aren't going to align with our pages.
No.
Well, give us an approximation of
I
what
can tell you
section.
the sections.
Okay, that'd be great.
It's nearly every section. They're not huge amounts. There'll be $1, $3 in each section, but when you go through to the total, there's an additional $200 and some odd.
So, Tina, I think we need real examples,
Yes,
if you will.
I'll give you some examples in just a moment. For instance, let's start with the town manager, close at the very beginning of the general fund. Okay, so you are showing the town manager total at $2,400.
What's the number?
It's 013210.100. It's under town manager. It's on our page 1.
Okay.
Yes. So the town manager total you have listed at 243,541. I have using.
No,
that's not accurate.
204,400.
204,400?
Yeah.
Town manager total?
No, she's looking at the manager total under actual.
Oh, okay.
2021.
Oh, you're
But
in
that's-
the, okay. Town manager total on page 214.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And I've got and I use the Excel function, 243,540. So I'm seeing that all the way down the line. So 251, 230 is accurate. 254,959 is what Excel's calculating, and you've got 254,960.
So
that's happening
Tina,
all over.
you'll see that everything here is rounded up to the nearest dollar. And so each of these behind the scenes is showing the pennies. So you're going to have those rounding issues
So
throughout.
it's not just pennies though, it's like $2, $3 here, $5 there, so that's going to be important. I can understand.
If you're
the
looking at the total at the very bottom of the section, that may add up to, I'm not sure without going through each one at this moment, but there's going to be rounding in each line item. And so if you round in 20, 30 line items, that may equal $2 to $3 when you're looking at the bottom line of a section. But overall, that's very minimal compared to the budget. It's just a rounding issue.
Yeah, usually round up $1 or $2, not 3 to 5.
Well,
But
it depends on how big your budget is.
Okay, well, those are concerns, but I'm also concerned with finding that additional $200,000.
I'm happy for you to come into my office.
Yeah,
You can,
I would.
I'll
I'm just
give you my
concerned.
number and you can give me a call and we can set up a time.
Yeah, because I think it's time for an audit, I think is definitely a good idea. But-
So we have a yearly audit. I want to be really clear. We are, the size of our town, we are audited yearly. Mr. Love comes in every year and shares all of that with the community. So what we're talking about here is a proposed budget, which is a very different document than our town audit. Yes, please.
And Melissa, can you just confirm that rounding up or down is an accepted accounting practice?
I think it is, and I believe this is Excel. There are formulas that deal with rounding. You can choose which type of rounding that you'd like. This is an acceptable document for presenting the budget, absolutely.
Right.
I just also want to see because it's easy to hit a function correctly and then it will just mess up your whole sheet. So I'm just, wanting to, maybe we can look through it and.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to learn more about what our processes are and function.
No, like I said, I'm happy to give you my phone number and you can give me a call. We can schedule a meeting.
I'd love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Were there
Can I just
other-
ask that if there are a lot of items, that if we have a meeting,
Yeah,
that
I'll
you
bring the doc.
provide me with something in advance so that I can be prepared for that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But we can work that out on the side.
Okay.
Okay. Tina, any other questions?
So that was mostly it for just the budget, just that I had found that additional money, and that maybe you can look and see if that calculation is right, and the errors that I found.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you very much for your questions. Thank you, Melissa. Okay. So, all right, so, all right, so now, process. So some of this we're going to do in executive session, but the things that we know we should make decisions on now, we have some items that agencies that are in the budget and others that are placed on the ballot. For those that are in the budget, that includes, I believe, BCRC, Bennington Free Library, McCullough Library, Heron Recreations, and the Rescue Squad.
Right.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
And those, BCRC is not, actually decreased their request for this year. Bennington Free Library has increased their request to $512,940. McCullough Library is not requesting addition, even though that is in the proposed allocation.
Right.
That's an error. Their part, they changed their mind. And then Perrin Recreations is set at $2,700. They have an additional request for the conservation.
Yeah, but
Perrin Conservation District have a additional request, but that's not part of this. And then the last is the Rescue Squad, which also is asking for an increase to $226,875.
20,000.
Conversation about these, the increases that we're seeing on any of these agencies, organizations?
I'll start it off. It's not a lot of money, but it's the one that I continue to struggle with the most, and that's Perrin Recreation, because of the...
Are you talking about the additional money they're requesting?
The 2,700, yeah, the whole.
2,700?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It just, I can't quite wrap my brain around the structure of their organization and how the funding will become part of our budget, but they're a not-for-profit. And I realize the libraries are also not-for-profits, but they seem very different to me. So anyway, I'm not speaking very eloquently, but that's the one that I'm struggling with, but I do realize it's not a lot of money.
Can I, they have been in the budget for close to 20 years at least, at 2,700. So what you're suggesting is that we should reconsider whether we are funding them at all. Is that what you're?
Yeah, maybe not that, but the discussion surrounding the remediation of the weeds.
Which is an additional 16.5.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
that's
that's a different, okay. So
that's what I'm struggling with.
Okay, okay.
So I just want to be sure I'm clear. The 16.5 is not before us, correct?
Not right now, no.
Oh, okay, then I withdraw my
Because what
comment.
we're doing is just looking at the things
Yeah,
that.
it's not on the budget.
I'm sorry.
And it's not on the budget, and it's not in the agencies. I'm just.
No, that was my mistake. Then why did we spend so much time talking about that?
Well, I mean, they made
Because
a,
they're coming to us for that funding.
Yeah.
They are asking for it.
yeah, but
But
let's hold that until we do.
I'm assuming that that's all to the side at this point.
I'm sorry, it was my
It's okay.
Okay,
ignorance.
no, that's all right.
All right, so any thoughts on I think we're probably not concerned about BCRC asking for less money.
Nope.
Any comments or thoughts on the Bennington Free Library increase, McCullough Library level funding, parent recreation level funding, rescue squad increase, particularly in light of this year's budget?
Well, as far as the library goes, I think it's been at least 5, maybe 6 years since Lynn has asked for any increase. As a matter of fact, she level funded all those years. And now she's asking for a modest increase.
Yeah, it may have been 3, but it has been several years. Okay, and so you are advocating that a small increase is warranted?
And as far as the rescue squad goes, I would take no action this year until they do a little bit more due diligence. I feel your frustration, Gene, on this, that, they could have gone out to other resources. Why didn't they go talk to Tom D or investigate other possibilities? And in the meantime, they're still sitting on $3 million.
Which will go away very soon at the rate they're drawing. I understand that, but the whole idea of endowments is to provide for income. Well, no, it's to provide income in part over the long haul, income, but you can't do that and continue to take from principal, which is what they're doing. So when we say we're going to drop it, we're not going to increase the $20,500 approximately. What we're saying is they're going to take that from their, they'll take that from their endowment and thereby exacerbate or quicken the drop off the table, as I describe it, when endowment will not be there. Now, do I think the $20,000 is going to make a huge bit of difference in that? Nope. Do I want the taxpayers to be on the hook for the additional $20,000? Not really. But I don't, the taxpayers are going to be on the hook eventually anyway, and to some degree, we taxpayers are on the hook because Medicare and Medicaid fund a good deal of what they are doing, even though they underfund. So, Jim, I get your notion of due diligence. I am frustrated as well. If you make a motion that we fund them at last year's level, I will probably support it, but I will hold my nose during it because I know exactly what that's going to do. It's just going to make it worse next year. It's like doing the roads. It's like what we heard about when doing the roads. If you don't do the basic maintenance and replacement, it will be more expensive in the time to come. It will satisfy us right now, and this is a tough budget year in any case.
Well, I'll make that motion then, Bruce. And, in the back of my mind and certainly in my heart, it's absolutely obvious, as the nose on my face, considerable nose, that Bennington needs a rescue squad.
Yeah.
We cannot live without one.
So you state your motion, please?
That it will be level funded from last year's
Bennington
amount.
Rescue Squad
Yeah.
level funded. Do I hear a second?
Come on, don't everybody speak at once.
For the purposes of discussion, do I hear a second? All right. So, do we have another motion or some more discussion around Rescue Squad?
Let me try this motion. That we would fund them at the request that they have made for FY24 and tie it to a report to us within 4 months.
I would second that motion.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yes, I'm not, nobody wants to pay more, but I don't, if that extra 20,000 can help in any way, we might be on the hook for much more later.
It's worth $20,000 to me to hear from them quarterly.
I don't want to pay them to hear for them to come before us.
That's true.
I really want to say that because I feel like they absolutely had an obligation.
Yes,
to
I
come to
agree.
us this year and say that it was not working.
Yep.
And they did not.
I know.
I do question, I mean, coming before us in a quarter and telling us that they had preliminary conversations with legislative delegation when it is in fact too late.
I know.
Too late, and that they want us to pull towns together, and they've got a preliminary list of towns that might be good. What are we doing pulling towns together? This is not a town issue. They are a private EMS service, and I am saying this with full recognition that we need the rescue squad. They provide invaluable services. But literally, from this time last year to now, we have not heard a single word from them.
Yeah.
I would want a lot more than coming before us in a quarter, because they were supposed to do that last year.
So give me a list, and I'll add it to my motion.
I think I'm not, I think I'm really struggling. I'm really struggling with this, because I feel like inaction and then coming and saying that.
Gene?
I'm having trouble. Go ahead.
The rescue squad's request ends in 875. I would encourage you to either round it down to 870 or include an additional $5 to 880, because that's how we deal in those numbers. Just as the BCRC request will probably end up being 380, not 383.
Okay.
That extra $3, I'm sure, won't be missed.
Okay, all right, so you'll want to amend that motion anyway.
Yeah.
Other people, what are you thinking about Rescue Squad?
I should do something.
Well, so Tom, Gary?
It feels to me that regardless of whether we give them this increase or not, it's the same conversation we're going to have next year and the year after that and the year after that. And it's just, I don't know that, is this 20 grand going to keep them going for,
No.
they said 3 years, right? Is it going to make it 2.5? I don't think so.
No.
That's what I'm weighing. You know, because in a budget, I mean, it's really a splash in the pan when you compare it to the whole budget, but still, we need to be responsible with every penny that we can be responsible for.
Right. If their endowment's going away in 3 years, $20,000 is.
Yeah, it's still going to go away in 3 years.
Okay.
So can I ask a quick question, Jeannie, of you? You said this is not a town issue, and yet we are spending, we're closing in on $250,000. We're closing in when a number of years ago, before the town vote, we weren't doing anywhere near that. It's like saying
25,000 maybe.
Yeah, it was whatever it was. I couldn't remember exactly. It would be like saying that the Bennington Free Library is not a town issue. It is. We spend $500,000 there.
Correct, and that is in part why we have a liaison.
Right.
And I think last year we actually did have that discussion about who is responsible for making sure that they are doing grant funding, they're chasing grants and looking for other sources of.
So all I'm saying is, as I said, if we do the 20,000 or not, I will hold my nose at any vote, because I don't like any of this. But it does seem to me that there is, if we are going to support even a private agency at this level, then it is an issue for this board to push for it seems to me, reasonable steps for unification, for consolidation that we need to do. We have an obligation to our taxpayers to say, look, we've done what we can, whether the outlying towns from us, the towns that are supporting services want to be involved in this or not, we should be also doing our work. And our work is trying to, it seemed to me, protect the taxpayers when we spend $220,000, or whether we spend $226,000 or $206,000. It doesn't, that is a sum that I feel much more important than, than our relationship with parent recreation.
So Bruce, yeah, I totally agree, and I do think we have a strong advocacy role here, and I do see it in some ways similar to what we did with Pathways Vermont in providing very, very significant advocacy to get legislation. And the way that happened was that organizations, both local and statewide, came to us and said, we need your advocacy, here's what we're trying to do, here's who we've had conversations with, and we want you to join those conversations. So I am totally agreeing with you. I think the mechanism, we can't advocate for what we don't know. I know. We need some direction.
Right.
So, okay, so.
Maybe it's then to also require that there be, and I don't want to push more on this board when I'm going off, but some kind of liaison with that board of directors. We need to have a voice at the table where decisions are being made that says you need to be this board, the rescue board, needs to be doing much more. Maybe that's what we require.
And I think that's an interesting conversation to have. Is there a threshold of town support that, that then we have?
Well, over 5 years, $1 million is a lot of cash.
Okay, but that is, okay, so that's a point well taken, but let's.
It won't resolve this $20,000 difference.
Okay,
and I almost don't care which way it goes.
Gary.
Yeah, the $20,000 is pretty small compared to, if you look at the numbers, they've lost $1 million in the last, 2-3 years. But I think that 20,000 shows our support, and maybe it's not just requiring them 4 months from now to give us a report, but a continued report, so that it's not, it doesn't stop with a presentation back to us in 4 months, but it continues along. Quarterly, something like that.
I feel that not giving them their increase, that we're punishing them for not coming back to us, and I'm not sure that that is mature or fair. I think they definitely need to be held accountable, and they did not follow through with what they were supposed to be doing, but punishing them by not giving them $20,000 just, in my mind, feels a little petty. Yeah.
All right, so do we have a motion that we need to amend that is on the table, right?
The amount. Yeah.
The amount and also maybe the
requirements.
Right.
Yeah.
So 226,870 and quarterly reports and a mandatory conversation about board liaison and participation in their.
So quarterly reports to the select board.
To the select board.
Yeah, presentation.
Presentations and I would say conversations, mandatory conversations about select board liaisoning with their board of directors. That seems to have worked a little bit in the library situation. I think our perception is that it has. I think we should try it at our.
I think they'll welcome it.
And we're offering our support as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Nancy, you got that?
I think so.
Thank you, Nancy.
Do we need a second?
It
I'll
was
second that.
inartfully spoken, but I'm still going to hold my nose any way we look at it, so.
Okay, and so we've got a second for the amended motion. Do we need one? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, more discussion. Tom, were you poised?
No, you just didn't.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any more discussion? No?
Are we just discussing the squad or the whole?
No,
No,
just the rescue
just
squad.
the
Okay.
squad.
This is just the rescue squad.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, so all those in favor of an increase to 226,870, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Whew, okay. Let's go back up to the Bennington Free Library then, okay? And is there a number, you just don't want any fives in there, is that right, Stu? You want,
Yeah.
so their number's okay?
So then we should fit BCRC's 33,838.
Yeah, but let's look at Bennington Free Library. So that's approximately a $15,000.
Right.
It's a 3% increase.
All right. Do I have a motion to get discussion going on Bennington Free Library?
So move.
Well, what do you move?
Moving, we allocate, that's true, I need to do that. The Bennington Free Library, $512,940.
Second.
All right, discussion.
Jeannie, you've been the liaison, right?
I am the lead.
You are the liaison. I would be interested in knowing how you feel about that.
Well, we have had, since I've been on the board, we've had 2 meetings. I believe that they have really taken to heart several of our recommendations from previous years. One about energy efficiency. They're moving full steam ahead on that, and they are looking at grants or rebates, that whole picture around energy conservation. I think they also have taken to heart our imploring them to get out the word about what they are doing. They are doing many good things, and if the community doesn't know it, then they can't take advantage of it, and also it doesn't come back as positive to their staff. I think the recent article that was in Vermont Digger, it was picked up by, the Banner wrote, and then Digger picked it up and made it statewide. It was really, really lovely around their work with individuals for whom English is not their first language, and the resources they're providing. That was really great. I also think their charter requires them, says that they will follow open meeting law, even though they are private, they're private nonprofit. They have, in the last few meetings, encouraged the public to come and speak to their board. One instance was speaking on building more resources, and actually much of the press that came out of that meeting was the press that they got came out of that meeting, and the board members saying, wow, this is super. Let's make sure you write a press release or you let people know this is happening. They are also entertaining a presentation from window dressers at their next meeting, because as you know, in some parts of the library, you can fly a kite indoors by the window in the winter. So looking at ways to button up some of those, persistent things, even as they put in heat pumps. So I think I've been, it's an engaged board, an active board, and I do think that they are really stepping up to do everything they can to make sure that we, as a community, we know what they offer and that they are actively soliciting our input.
Thank you, that's helpful.
And I was the liaison there before Jeannie was, and I was really, they they look for alternate funding possibilities. I mean, they really look into grants and other ways to pay for things that they do a pretty good job at that. So we are the largest contributor to their budget, but they are seeking out monies from other sources, which is good to know.
And in their budget this year, it did indicate that they did a better job of bringing in grant funding. It's always easier to get funding for children than it is for adults.
Yep.
But I think some of their renovations, they've been able to get some grant funding. I think there's still, there's still more that can be done there, but I think it's definitely the right direction. Any other discussion? All right. So all those in favor of increasing the Bennington Free Library budget to $512,940, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
I abstain.
Oh, you're abstaining?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, and then I think the other two, let's see, do we need to vote on McCullough Library if they're on the level funded?
Yes, you should.
We should, okay. So then the other three are BCRC, I guess we should do BCRC. We want to change their amount to a round number, okay? To have a motion for BCRC.
Yeah, that we would fund them at $33,380.
Second.
Sufficient rounding.
Yes. Any discussion? No? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. And then the last is...
You have North Bennington and
North
Parent
Bennington.
Recreations.
Okay.
Both level funding.
Okay, so then we have two level funded.
I would move that we pay both Pair and Recreation the amount it requests at $2,700 and North Bennington Recreation, Bennington, or the McCullough Library, excuse me, at $42,500.
All right. Second?
Second.
All right. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, and that's everybody, right? Let's see, we do have other agencies that are going on the ballot. I want to say we changed our process a little bit a couple years ago so that organizations no longer had to go out and petition every year, and instead the requirement was that they provide us with financial information from previous year and their budget for the next year, and that they also give us a narrative. And those are available on the website for everybody in the community to see. It has been challenging. I know that this year, after the deadline, Stu reached out to several organizations that had not submitted. Most were very prompt at getting the information in, even though it was after the deadline. One organization just gave us their FY 2024 information yesterday.
Right.
Which, I guess I'm just in a cranky mood, feels really unacceptable to say that this doesn't fit into their budgeting process. If they want to request town funding, then they need to give the taxpayers the information so they can vote, right? So I do think that this is something we should revisit and make that deadline a hard and fast deadline. I think it is not Stu should not be calling folks up, chasing them to turn in required information so that taxpayers can vote, voters can vote on whether to fund them.
Ironic that, somebody's coming to you hat in hand, and you have to chase them down and say, we'd like to give you our money.
Not to mention all these other agencies that did it properly and
yes,
went through that got us the information on time. And, yeah, that'd be kind of a slap to them, too, if we just keep accepting things after the deadline.
That's true.
I would encourage us to make it a hard and fast deadline. And, I mean, even the information that we got in several instances was not really adequate information, particularly the budget kind of information. You know, and I know we know what we're talking about here. That to me is that's not a budget. Well, it is, sorta, but good grief, it doesn't even break down I didn't even want to think about doing it a percentage of, I mean, when program income is huge. So I would encourage the board to make this a hard and fast deadline, and maybe that will change agency behavior. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm thinking that we may want to take this up, if not at the next meeting, the one after, and just actually vote on this. Okay. All right, so other than that, I think that the other request that we have is the 16.5 from Lake Perrin that they gave us a presentation last Saturday on. Anyone have thoughts or want to make a motion on allocating?
I would.
We were going to wait for them to do their due diligence.
So then I think the motion would be not to fund.
I would move that we take no action whatsoever.
Yes. Okay, do I have a second?
Or table
I
it.
see them all week in Montpelier.
Okay, so do I have a second?
A second.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? No? All right. All in favor of taking no action on Lake Perrin's request? I'll say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, great, all right. Okay, so that maybe was the easy part. All right, any thoughts, questions, comments on the budget as presented and all the discussion that we've heard?
Send it to the voters.
Anyone else? Is there anything in here that we are feeling we cannot support?
No.
Okay. So then Stu, so then we need to go into executive session for the purposes of personnel compensation requests, yes?
Yes.
All right, and we do plan to come out and make a decision.
Right.
Okay, so let's take a...
I will move that we move into executive session for the purposes of personnel discussion.
All right. All right, and so let's take a 2-minute break.
You got to vote on it.
Well, okay, let's do that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? 2-minute break, okay. Executive session.
I would like to make a motion.
Excellent.
I would move the following salary amounts for the 3 positions that we have been discussing for town manager. It would be a salary of $124,490. For the town clerk, it would be a salary of $97,340. And for the town treasurer, $17,240.
What was the last amount? 240.
240.
Thank you.
Do I have a second? Great. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? All right. There we are. All right, so is there anything else we need to vote on today? Stu, I'm looking at you.
If in fact, unless you're going to make some changes at some point in the future, you could vote to approve the budget
Okay,
as presented, and that way we can develop the warning and have it ready for you.
okay, all right.
That would include what, the additions that we
Yes.
did today,
Yes.
including at the police department,
All right.
right?
Yes.
Then I would make that motion, that we approve the budget for its vote by the voters.
Excellent, all right. Thank you. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? No. All right, so then I think we have concluded our work. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Yes, okay, we got those two. Any discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank
Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.